As many of you know, we do record these sessions, like I said, we post these recordings out. I'll show you in a little bit where we do that. But first, let me welcome you all to class. My name is John Meredith, and today I will be your instructor. I have been with Sumo a little over 2 years, and before that, I've done lots and lots of different jobs: IT manager, DBA, programmer, network admin, on and on and on it goes. But the thing I enjoy doing most is teaching. So I take roles lately as a role that you can teach. If you love what you do, it's a lot more fun. So I love teaching. So I actually started teaching way back in 1982 as a Navy instructor. So back in my U.S. Navy days. Otherwise, like I said, my only ask of you, if you have questions, please feel free to let us know. And I'm assisted today and helped today by Odell. So Odell, you want to say hi?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome, and good luck here, and just soak up everything you can from John. He has a plethora of knowledge on this topic, so we're glad you joined us.
Agreed. We are glad you joined us. So today we're going to take and continue on our journey. Now, for those of you who weren't with me yesterday or with us yesterday, hey, John, also Navy, good for you, John. We'll have to commiserate and talk about that offline. Anyway, back to the search mastery. So yesterday you kind of got an overview, a broad overview of what Sumo logic is, right? And so today we're going to focus really on writing queries, focus on log queries. There's two types of queries that we have. Log queries is one, metric queries are another, and for that we have a metric mastery class. So our focus today is on log queries. We're going to go into a lot of detail about it. Additionally, I'm also going to show you a little bit about new dashboards, just as a side note, because we didn't really get a chance to talk about that yesterday. So I'm going to kind of do an audible here and figure that out. And yes, Bill, I know you're Army since you're a Sumo, so I remember. So good, excellent. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. The plan here is we're going to do a little bit of intro and overview here real quick, like we did yesterday, kind of clarify a couple of things. Where does our data come from and stuff like that. Then we're going to jump right into the labs. So this is very much a hands-on lab class. And we're going to go through a series of labs. I think there's about 13 labs all in all, or 14 labs all in all, that we'll go through. And then after that, we'll go ahead and take the certification exam. Now, as I mentioned before, if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Odell and I will gladly field your questions and help you out. All right, pure and simple. As you also know, if you take the certification exam, those of you with us yesterday, if you take the certification exam and pass it, you can get an Uber Eats voucher. So what you'll do is when you take the test, and I'll talk about this at the end of the class, I'll remind you about this at the end of the class, but if you take the test and you pass it, you can take a copy of your certificate, do a screen capture of it, just put it in an email, send it to training-promotions@sumologic.com, and we will send you an Uber Eats voucher for $15. So who says there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? One thing we would like you to do is make sure you put your job title in there if it's not part of your email signature. So we basically know the types of people that were doing that, okay? Somebody asked a copy of the lab's PDF, which you can send me. Michael, I'm actually going to show you where that is, okay? We will earn, Louise is like, well, earn $15 per certification. No, actually, Louise, you'll learn $15 in Uber Eats vouchers for each certification. So we're really trying to promote the certifications. That's that simple. Which, by the way, one thing for Bill and any other Sumos I have in class, I need to disclose to you as a Sumo, you're not eligible for this promotion. So we don't get a free lunch. But anyway, and like I said, I'll rehash this again in a little bit. Those of you with us yesterday in the fundamentals class, right? Odell talked about how we can use Sumo logic to look at our operational intelligence. How are our systems doing? And that systems could be, you could be on the cloud, you could be on-prem, doesn't make any difference to us. But what services are running, what systems are running, all that sort of thing. Back in my IT manager days, I used to come in about an hour early and I used to go through my logs, my backup logs, make sure my backups ran, my Active Directory logs to see who managed to get themselves locked out, my email logs to see what emails bounced. Had I had Sumo logic, I could have glanced at some dashboards and probably figured out in 5 minutes, which took me about 45 minutes to do. So this is a real time saver. Again, you can build dashboards and other visualizations to tell you how your environment's doing under operational intelligence, or maybe under security intelligence. Where are my users logging in from? Does that make sense, right? Are they logging in from places they should or places they shouldn't? What kind of systems are they using? Browsers are they using? Does that make sense, right? What's my firewall port traffic and stuff doing? By the way, tomorrow's class, for those of you attending tomorrow's class as well, we're going to write queries specifically for security. That's going to be the focus of tomorrow's class. So we're going to deep dive on this a bit. And then, of course, there's business intelligence. Maybe you've got a web server. Maybe you're looking at your business as a whole. What products are selling? What products are not selling? How are people using charge cards, or how are they paying for them? Where are we shipping to? Where's our customers located? Things like that. So you can build dashboards to provide you information like that. And then over here at the far right, at a very high level, we can look at global intelligence of operational intelligence, security intelligence, and business intelligence at a very high level. So for example, let's say that AWS Guard Duty is telling us there's an attack going on somewhere in the world. Well, we can see perhaps who's affected and what the impact of that might be. So, yep. So yeah, Dallas is asking, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. You asked about where you missed the training yesterday. Where can you see it? We're going to show you that. So just give me a few minutes and we'll take care of that. So here we go. Again, we're going to talk about your data. You could be on-prem. You could be in the cloud. It doesn't make any difference to us. As long as you're generating logs and metrics, we can ingest that stuff. So we don't care if you're using software as a service. In fact, Sumo Logic, quite frankly, is a software as a service environment, right? All you need is a web browser to access it. In fact, speaking of that, Sumo Logic is on an AWS environment. So we run on AWS. We also support Azure and Google Cloud Platform, but we run on AWS. So we support multi-tenancy. We scale up, scale down as we need to. So as your company may need more resources because more users are using it, we'll scale you up automatically. Don't need those resources, we'll scale you down. Machine learning, we'll find we've got a lot of machine learning functionality and advanced analytics in here, as well as a bunch of APIs. So for those of you who have programmatic tendencies, we've got a whole slew of APIs, application programming interfaces that you can use to programmatically do things in Sumo. And then finally out here on the right where it says security and monitoring, this is our crown jewel. We work with great rigor to maintain our SOC 2 compliance, our CSA STAR compliance. We are FedRAMP moderate authorized. So these are the certifications that we've received by outside agencies that will help ensure that you know that your data is secure and we understand your security needs. And then, of course, down here under your people, the various roles and stuff that you might have. In fact, I suspect some of you probably have a role that's not listed down here, but you still need to interact with Sumo. We're glad to have you. Okay. Lashmi, you said I've not received tomorrow's session link even after I've registered. Do me a favor, Lashmi. Send an email to training@sumologic.com. That's training@sumologic.com, and let them know that, and they will then take care of that. If you still haven't received it by the end of the class, I'll see if I can help you out. So thanks for asking. All right. For those of you with us yesterday, we talked about the Sumo Logic data flow. How does Sumo Logic work? And we really work in 3 easy steps. One, we've got to get data into Sumo Logic, and that comes in the form of 2 mechanisms. One are collectors, the other are sources. So think of a collector as the highway under which your data comes into Sumo. That's it, just a big old highway. And what collectors are going to do is they're going to compress, they're going to encrypt, and they're going to send. That's all they do. Compress, encrypt, and send. That's it. Now, in those collectors, we also have sources. And these are the sources of data that you want to bring in. You want to bring in your AWS S3 logs? Great. CloudTrail logs? Great. You got your on-prem web server logs? Great. Whatever logs and metrics you want to bring in, you will have a source for that. So the sources also play a vital role in getting information into Sumo Logic. And they are underneath the collectors. The collector is going to take that log data or that metric data. It's going to compress it, encrypt it, and send it. That's what it does. Now, once data is in Sumo Logic, we can then search and analyze. We're going to write some queries, build some charts, do some visualizations, all that good stuff. In fact, today's focus is really going to be on searching and analyzing. So that's what we're going to do. And then once you've got these visualizations, you can start creating dashboards. And I'll show you a little bit about dashboards today, a little bit about the new dashboards, since we didn't really get a chance to talk about them yesterday. So we'll talk about that. And then also, you can also create alerts. And we're going to talk a little bit about alerts today in one of our labs. So lots of good stuff to talk about there.
Just a quick question before we move on to the next slide, may I?
Sure, please.
Okay, so when you say the data collection, so say for example, if we have hosted our application on the GCP cloud, will we be able to monitor different matrices such as the CPU and memory and stuff being utilized with the data collection?
Yes, you will. Or you can, let's put it this way. The question is, do you take advantage of that as a company? I don't know. But yes, you have the capability of doing that.
And is that the log or is that the metric?
That's actually metrics. So if you're looking at CPU utilization and all the various health indicators of a system, those are really metrics. Those are probably a metric source that's coming in.
Which we need to set up with the Sumo account, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And actually, I'll go you a little bit better. Sumo logic, we charge by how much data you ingest. Okay. And so that's typically how we charge. But the point is also based on that, we also give you a certain number of metrics based on how much data you're bringing in. And a lot of companies do not typically use the metrics that they're allocated. So they're leaving money on the table. So I would encourage you, if you're not bringing in some of the metrics that you need to see what's happening within your organization, I would encourage you to consider that and add those metrics so that you can see, how is my system performing? Am I constantly at max CPU utilizations and things like that? Or is it automatically spawning? If I'm on the cloud, is it automatically scaling up through Kubernetes or whatever mechanism that you've got? Is it doing and behaving the way it's supposed to? We have recently kind of focused our efforts on two areas: security and observability. Because let's face it, your cloud environments or your environments as a whole are probably very complex. And we want to be able to see through a single piece of glass, a single dashboard, if you will, or maybe multiple dashboards, how your systems are performing. And so, having that metric information and stuff could be very vital to how things are going on. So I apologize for going into a little bit of a verbal tirade there, but I wanted to be clear. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah, that answers my question.
Good.
And will you be covering like how to get those data into matrices as part of any of these Sumo training sessions?
Not today, no. And actually, we
Okay.
talk about this collection and source process and bringing data in. We talk about that in our administration class.
Okay.
So in our
Thank you
administration
very
class, also, if you take the metric mastery class, that focuses on metrics and metric queries, we show you also how to bring the data in, the metrics in, then that class as well.
Okay.
So, but I will show you where those collectors are and the sources and stuff like that. Okay.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Good stuff. Keep it coming. All right. When we ingest all of this stuff that we bring in, we typically have metadata tags. Now, metadata tags or metadata is not a Sumo logic copyrighted term. Metadata is an industry standard term. It means information about my data. That's what metadata is. And so when you create a collector, we can reference that collector and query by that collector by saying _collector equals, and then the name of that collector, okay? Or we can say _source equals, and the name of that source. So we can reference it by collector, by source. We can also reference it by source host, or the name and the path of where the log file is, which we call source name. But you'll notice these four are not bolded, and this one is. This is source category. When you create a source, you can define a source category, and you can freely configure this based on your structure of your organization. So, for example, a lot of companies may have a prod environment, a dev environment, a QA environment, whatever. And then in those environments under prod, they might have maybe web servers or email servers or authentication servers. So they might have something like source category equals prod / authentication / and then the name of my authentication logs. So you can put slashes to break this up from a large environment to sub-assemblies, to further sub-assemblies as you want to. And you'll see that we use source category quite heavily because it can be freely configured and it can break things down nicely for you. So you're going to see, like I said, and it's actually a test question for this test, that we use source categories, like I said, to, it's our favorite metadata tag. It's one that you use the most of. Okay. All right. And Raul, you don't need to raise your hand. Go ahead and ask your question, sir.
Can we manually upload like offline log files, like pcap files or any already captured files, within the Sumo Logic sim tool? Offline
Okay,
log
so
files.
can you upload log files into Sumo Logic? Is that your question?
Yes.
Well, actually, you'll do it through this collection process. You'll do it through the
Suppose
collection process.
let's we have some log file, okay, and
Right.
we would like to manually upload on the Sumo Logic so that we can search easily and understand what are the details about the logs.
Okay. I mean, typically the way we ingest those log files is through this collection process. So it's very easy to set up these collectors and very easy to bring that data into Sumo, and then you can query off that data. But the challenge here is that once you bring those log data in, we need to be able to look at, and you need to be able to look at and understand the format and structure of those logs. And they could be structured, they could be unstructured.
There is an option or not?
There's not an option to import. There is an option through the collection to bring in. It's a fairly simple option.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, all right. So what we want you to do is we want you to go ahead and log in here. Now, what I want you to do is fire up a Google Chrome or Firefox browser. And I want you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And when you go there, you're going to see something that looks like this. The next thing I want you all to do is to pick a 3-digit number. Any 3-digit number that you're fond of. And I'd like you to type it in the chat box like some of your classmates are doing. You can take the same number. If you were in yesterday's class, you can use that same number. And ultimately, what you're going to do for the email address is you're going to log in as training plus analyst with that 3-digit number. You're going to replace these hashtags or pound signs with your 3-digit number at sumologic.com. And then you're going to type in the password of February 2020. I'm sorry, February 2022, exclamation mark. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop my slides here for just a second. And I'm going to take this lovely information here and I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it in the chat box. So if you'll bear with me a second. And then I'm going to walk you through logging it. So out here in my Chrome browser, I have fired up service.sumologic.com and it has taken me here. And now I can log in. Now I'm actually not going to take 235. I'm going to take 985. Why 985? Well, that was the hull number of the USS Cushing, the last ship I was on when I was on active duty. So, and then the password is capital FEB 2022 exclamation mark. And in Google Chrome, as you probably know, you can click on this little eyeball over here to the right, and it will show you what that password is. And so what I want you all to do is I want you all to log into our training environment. Now, this is our training environment that you all can open, you can access, you can see, you can do whatever you want. But I would like you all to log in because from here on out, we're going to do hands-on stuff. Okay? Hands-on stuff. And
just a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
When I logged into the account, I can see like a couple of more than 10 tabs or searches that's being open. So is there a quick way that I can close them rather than closing manually?
That's a great question. So let me answer your question by trying to open some tabs here. Let me just bear with me here a second while I open up a bunch of tabs. Again, there's nothing in these tabs, but I'm just going to create and open up a bunch of tabs to answer your question, right? Here, all kinds of stuff. Now, to close up a bunch of tabs, on any one of these tabs, you see you got these 3 dots, 3 vertical dots.
Mm-hmm.
You click on that, there's an option that says close all tabs.
Oh yeah, I see. Thank you.
And that gets rid of all those tabs. So great question. I appreciate you asking. Raul, is there a question, sir? You don't have to raise your hand, by the way. Just go ahead and ask your question. Raul, is there a question? Okay. Just so you guys know, I'm going to actually log out, and the way you log out, and now let me back up for a second. Over here in the left is your navigation panel. If your navigation panel is not open, like mine is not open right now, you can simply click on this hamburger menu or stack of pancakes or whatever you want to call it, slices of cheese, to open it up. And then down here at the bottom, you'll see you're logged in. And if you click on that, there's an option to log out. Now, I'm going to log out only because I'm going to log in with my Sumo Logic credentials here that I have. Again, those of you who are Sumo employees don't have credentials here, but I'm going to log in with my credentials because if you get stuck, I have administrative rights to fix things. And as you can see here, I've got some queries open that I was playing with. And as I showed you earlier, I'm just going to go in here and right click and close all tabs to clean this up. So I want to make sure you guys are all in. Okay. So make sure you're all logged in. And when you're logged in, if you would raise your hand. So under the participants, I'll see that you've raised your hand. That way I know that you're in. If you're having problems logging in, let us know. Let me or Odell know, and we'll gladly work with you to get you logged in. Because most of this class is going to be all hands-on. Lots of work.
I have one question.
Sure.
Can I ask?
Please.
Can you show us like there is a failed attempt? Okay, let's say for example, those are login with the service.sumologic.com, and there is some failed attempts occurring. So these logs exist on the web server of Sumo Logic. Can we search in the Sumo Logic SIM solution these particular logs so that we better understanding of the failed attempts?
Okay. The short of it is that we're not going to get into the Cloud SIM solution at all today. This class has nothing to do with the Cloud SIM.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's totally out of bounds. For those of you who are not familiar with what he's talking about, is in our training environment, over here in the main menu, in this area down here is the main menu. Okay. There is an option that says Cloud SIM Enterprise. And the Cloud SIM solution, SIM stands for Security Information and Event Management. This takes the log data that you're getting in from Sumo Logic, ingests it down, analyzes the records and the information coming in, and it generates a series of security insights. So the focus of our Cloud SIM product is to generate a bunch of insights that we can then understand what's going on, troubleshoot, and all that sort of thing. We've got 2 classes that teach about the Cloud SIM. Cloud SIM Fundamentals, Cloud SIM Administration. And that's where we go into this in more detail. Okay. To make it easy for yourselves, if anybody followed along with me, you can just hit your back button, take you back to the Sumo Logic.
Just a question again, but for that to get enabled, like the Cloud SIEM Enterprise, we don't have it on our account. So is that a separate thing that we should be enrolled in or we should pay for?
It is a separate thing that your company may or may not have purchased. Now, the other thing is once you've got it, you've got to have privileges for it. So your company may have purchased it and they may not have enabled it for you on your menu. But more than likely, they probably didn't purchase it. The Cloud SIM Enterprise is something relatively new. It's come out in the last year. So it's something your company may not be aware of.
Okay.
So I don't want to turn this into a sales commercial.
Sorry. So if we are to purchase it, do you have any idea on which plan we should be in, and will Sumo support will help us in basically to integrate that into our account?
Correct. What happens is if your company has this, they will embed this into your account, and this option will now become available to your administrator, and they can then sign rights to other folks so they can see it, and on it goes.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
John, you mentioned that this is Sumo is in AWS, right? So I'm wondering, is it there in multi-region, or it just it goes to one region and multiple availability zone? How is the
right? Right.
Uh,
At Sumo Logic, we have typically across all the regions of the world. We're a worldwide company and we have customers all throughout the world. So
Mhm.
we typically provision you on an AWS environment closest to your environment.
okay.
Okay.
But it's not multi-region then.
I'm sorry?
So the data that Sumo will be collected will not be in multi-region.
Typically, no. Actually, I'm not sure about that.
Because-
I would imagine not. I would imagine not. But I don't know. That's a question for your account team.
I see. Okay. Because, there was an outage a couple weeks ago or about a month ago.
Yep.
In AWS, and what we encountered was we lost the data.
Okay.
So that's what I was wondering,
That's interesting. Okay. I didn't realize that I know there was an outage in AWS. I knew about that, but I didn't realize it resulted in data loss. So, okay. Yeah, typically it's not, yeah, okay. I gotcha. Melody, by the way, asked a question. How long do we have access to these training credentials? Melody, you can use these training credentials forever and ever. I will say that the password though changes every month. Okay. And so in this, I am going to put my email address, which I'm going to put that in the chat box. So when we get around to March and it changes on the first Monday of the month, okay, if you want to know what the March password is, you can email me. Now, I don't know what that password is until we change it, but you can email me and I will gladly tell you what the March password is once we change it. So Melody, I hope that answers your question. Thanks for asking. All right. So just trying to help you all out. Good questions. Keep them coming. Now, we are in the Sumo Logic environment here. By the way, let me make sure the hands are all down. Let me lower all hands. Looks like 37 of you are all logged in. I'm not hearing anybody having problems, so yay, good job. But we're all logged in and we're ready to play. Now, a couple things I want to point out here. Number one, I want to point out, somebody's been asking, where can I see a recording to this class or other classes or whatever? Where are the slides, all that stuff. And by the way, the slides are important only because the exam that you're going to take today, if you choose to take it, is open book, open notes, open slides. And so we want to make it easy for you to take that. So the first question is, how do you get to those recordings, to those slides? Well, here in Sumo Logic, if you click on this little house tab, right, little house tab, then you click on certification tab, and then you click on get certified, it will take you to our learning management system. And by the way, here's where we'll be taking the exam, only you won't be logged in as a training account, you'll be logged in with yourself. But here is where our certification exams are. Here is where our self-paced courses are. For those of you who want to take the metric class or the admin class and don't want to wait till it's scheduled, you can come in here and you can, under general here, take the admin self-paced course. Or like I said, if you want to learn about metrics, there's a self-paced course for that. I'm just going to use the back button to take me back. Okay, so there's a series of self-paced courses. We also, by the way, have a bunch of YouTube videos. So if you go out to YouTube and do a search for Sumo Logic, you'll find we've got a channel out there. And you can sign up for our channel. And we've got, micro lessons, every 5 or 10 minutes, whatever, on how to set up a collector, how to set up a source, things like that. But for our purposes today, to get those recordings, those slides and stuff like that, you'll see there's a recorded live training. And if I click on this recorded live training,
Sorry, could you say that again?
Sorry about that. That was Siri. And you can see the class, that whatever class you're in. Now we're in Search Mastery Cert Jam. So if I click on that, you get to register. And this is a real quick, click the button and you're registered, that easy. And then here, you'll see that we've got a recording of this class. We also have a PDF of the lab guide. We also have a PDF of the slides that you can download if you want to. So that's where the recordings are for our classes. It's under the certification, get certified. Specifically, it's under recorded live training. And then you can listen to any of our courses. So again, you want to listen to our observability fundamentals or our cloud sim. We'll be adding more and more courses out here. We have 10 certification courses, and right now we only have 6 of them out here. So we're in the process of converting the last several. Okay. Okay. Ken, I'm going to answer your question in just a second. So good question. Yep, Ken. So Ken has realized, back to Sumo Logic here for a second. Back to Sumo Logic, Ken has probably clicked on the Home tab, and he's also clicked on this Learn tab. And those of you with Odell yesterday, Odell pointed out this Learn tab. And here we see our hands-on lab fundamentals and our hands-on lab administration. The obvious question is, where's our search mastery labs? In fact, where are our labs? So I appreciate that, because that was going to be my next topic. All right. So what I want to do here is I want to create a new tab. Bear with me a second. I've got everything in the world in my way. I'll tell you what, let me stop my sharing for just a second. Just bear with me a second. Let me pin this tab over here to the right, move it over here to the right, and resume my sharing. The Zoom section here, the Zoom controls are kind of in my way. Okay. So here I've opened up a new tab, and the question is, where are our labs? Our labs are in our documentation. Okay. So our documentation, to get there, if you open up a new tab and you type in help.sumologic.com, that's help.sumologic.com, you will see that this is our documentation. This is our doc hub. We refer to it as our doc hub, but this is our product documentation. So for those of you who wanted to learn about Cloud SIM, there's a chapter on Cloud SIM. Those of you who want to learn about our APIs, there's a chapter on our APIs. All kinds of different chapters here on various things. You want to learn about metrics, a whole chapter on metrics. Now, one other thing for this exam, the exam is open book, open notes, open documentation. So getting to this documentation might also be a big help to you. But I want to point out 2 things in this documentation that you're going to find very valuable. 2 things. Okay. 1, here in this first chapter that starts off with Start Here, if I click on Quick Start Labs and Tutorials, here is a listing of all of our labs. So yesterday we did the fundamentals class, there's hands-on labs fundamentals. That's what those are. If I look up here, there's hands-on labs search mastery. And if I click on that, I see that there are 13 labs that we are going to go through today. And this is going to be what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to get into those in just a few minutes. Now, whenever I click in a chapter, I see the chapter listed up here, and then it's broken out. And then the other chapters are listed here as well. Now, one other thing I want to show you, and by the way, I'm going to take this link where our labs are, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it into the chat box. So for those of you who are having a hard time following along with me, you can just click on that link, and that will take you to our labs. Okay. But something else I want to show you. We're going to focus on querying. We're going to focus on writing good queries. So the question is, John, does Sumo have a cheat sheet or something to help us? And the answer to that question is absolutely. And I'm going to show you where you can find it a couple of different ways. Here under my search chapter. So here in my search chapter, you'll see in my search chapter, I have something called my search cheat sheets. And if I click on my search cheat sheet, you'll see I've got 4 categories of search cheat sheets. I've got some IIS search cheat sheet examples and all that stuff. We're going to focus on log operatives today. So if I click on log operatives cheat sheet, here is a cheat sheet of all of our various operators. And this is kind of the short version. You can click on these and it'll go into more detail. Goes into our documentation on more detail on these various operators. But I'm going to take this URL, and again, I am going to paste it into the chat box. Okay. Now,
Can you just show us how you got there again one more time, please? Real quick.
how I got there again?
Yes.
Yep. So I went to, bear with me a second. By the way, I'm going to show you other ways to get to our documentation, but this to me is the easiest. I'm old school. I like URLs. Help.sumologic.com. And then to get here to this thing that's in the search chapter. And in the search chapter, there's in the section here called search cheat sheets. And in the search cheat sheets, here's our log operator cheat sheet. So that's how we get there. And again, I put the link for this in the chat box. Now, one other thing, somebody's going to ask, well, gee, is there a PDF version of this? So if you look at the first paragraph here, you'll see at the end of the first paragraph, it talks about you can download the PDF version. So you can click on that PDF version and you can print this out. For those of you who may have messed up on Valentine's Day and didn't give your significant other some special present for Valentine's Day and you're in the doghouse, you can print this out and give this to your significant other. Of course, you're probably going to stay in the doghouse, but you know, what the heck. So there you go. Couple little resources there for you. All right. So there is that. Now let's go back to Sumo Logic. Here in Sumo Logic, if you want to, two things I'm going to show you. Again, if your navigation panel is not open, click on the hamburger menu to open it up. Then down here, click on Help. This is the main menu. And here under Help, you can click on Documentation and it will take you to help.sumologic.com, just so you know. So that's another way of getting to the documentation. Me, I'm old school. I like URLs. So, okay. One student can't get in. Who can't get in? Oh, I see. Narendra, it says, please verify your credentials. Okay. You've tried different numbers. Narendra, what is your email address that you're using? Narendra, what email address are you using? Are you using training plus analyst with a number like 985? I just use 985, 985 should work. So training plus analyst 985 at sumologic.com. And then the password, of course, is, okay. That looks good. And then the password I assume you're using is capital FEB 2022 exclamation mark. Good. Excellent. Now, the other question I've got for you, Narendra, is are you going to, in the URL up here, are you using service.sumologic.com or are you using your company's environment? You want to make sure you're going to service.sumologic.com. Then you should be able to get there. Do me a favor. Use Training Plus Analyst 985 because I know that works. So try 985 just for fun. Please. I was just in there, so. And let me know if that works for you. It should. Still not working. Okay. Narendra, I'll tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to turn this into a teachable moment. Narendra, if I ask you to share your screen so we can see what's going on and troubleshoot it, is that okay with you? Okay. I have promoted you to a panelist.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I promoted you to a panelist. And so you should come over here on the panelist side and you can actually share your screen. So hopefully you get the acknowledge that invitation here. You'll come over here as a panelist and we'll get you taken care of. I don't want to leave anybody behind. So Narendra, did you get that little message that said we want to promote you to a panelist? Should be like a pop-up menu.
I didn't get any pop-up so far.
Okay, it's because you're right now, if you're not in the attendees list, you're not in the panelist list, you're somewhere in between. It will time out here in a minute. Okay. Somebody asked the question, can we retake the exams? Absolutely. You can retake the exams right away whenever you want. No problems. Yeah. So you can retake them. If you fail them, you can take them again. Narendra, I need to wait for this thing to time out and then I'll try this again. I will try to make you a panelist and then you can share your screen and we can troubleshoot.
He's a panelist, John.
What's that?
He's a panelist.
Okay, so you're a panelist, good. If you would share your screen, sir, I'll stop my sharing and you can share your screen. And we can troubleshoot this and see what's going on.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Should have a button now that says share screen. There we go. Starting to see it, or starting to materialize. Okay, excellent. Good. Okay. So service.sumologic.com, training plus analyst at sumologic.com. Do me a favor, turn on the password. Let's make sure that's right. Okay. Put an exclamation mark at the end, please. There is an exclamation mark at the end. There you go. Hit sign in.
Oh, I forgot that one. Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
No problem. Glad you asked.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't say we want to leave nobody behind here. We want to make sure you all get a chance to participate.
Okay, thank you
Go
very
ahead and
much.
stop
Sorry for my
sharing and
mistakes.
go back to normal here. Well done. And you want to stop sharing, please. Tell you what, let's see if I can help you out here a little bit. There you go. Good. Excellent. All right. So let me get back to sharing my screen. Let's get back to this. Let's get back to the labs and have ourselves a great time. So well done. Okay. So let's get into lab number 1. So you may recall I went out to the documentation and I went out to start here. And I went out to quick start labs and tutorials and hands-on lab search mastery. And again, I will take this URL and I will paste it again in the screen here. So you all have it. And I want you to pin this. So if you're running Google Chrome, you'll have an option to pin this tab, which will kind of compress it and bring it to the side. I want to be able to switch back and forth between these labs and my Sumo logic environment. Okay. So here in my labs, going to lab 1. Now I'm going to warn you, labs 1, 2, and 3 have a lot of parts and pieces to them. We're telling you the story about how to start creating queries, and there's some important details and stuff in here and all that stuff. After that, we're going to get into labs that typically have a single purpose. But these first couple of labs start out as kind of brutal. Okay. So the first couple of labs, like I said, usually has about 10 parts to it. So you can take in lab 1 here, this code, if you want to. You can swipe over this code, right click on this code, copy it, and you can go up here. And everything we're going to do in Sumo Logic today, everything we're doing in Sumo Logic is under new, this new blue button, log search. So new log search. And then you can paste this code. Now, for those of you probably having a hard time seeing my screen, let me make this a little bit bigger so it makes it a little easier for you to see. Okay. Now, as I said, you can copy and paste the code, but you can also start typing. So if I start with an underscore, and all of our reserved words start with an underscore. So as I start typing an underscore, I start typing, it starts showing me what my options are. And then when I select my source category, labs / Apache / and then I can pick what it is I want. Now I'm going to get into the source categories here in just a little bit to where that stuff is. Okay. Can try a different number. Try 666 or 444 or something. Okay. Thanks. Now to run this, by default, test question, by default, a query runs for 15 minutes. You can change that. I'll get into that in just a minute. But to run this, I click on this blue button, or if I hit the enter key, it will automatically run this. Okay, run my query. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at my Apache Access logs for the last 15 minutes. And down here, I see that the query is done. Status is done. Took 0 seconds. I got 6,900 records back. And here's my session ID. Now, out of that 6,900 messages, here is the first 25 messages. And there are 276 pages of 25 messages. And if you're quick with math, that'll come something close to 6,900. If you want to change of how many messages you get per page, here in the gear setting, there is a display message preference, and you can change this value if you want to, how many messages you want to display per page. Okay. Okay, Kenneth says, please verify your credentials. Again, try to log in. Either you didn't type in the user ID and password correctly, or the URL is wrong, or something's wrong with that login. So please, make sure you got the exclamation mark in the password and all that fun stuff. Thanks. So I've run a query here. I've asked for Apache access and all that fun stuff. Now, could I have said, you know what? I can get my source category is equal to a specific source category, or I can use the wildcard. For us, the wildcard is the star. And so when I run this, it's going to show me my logs for the last 50 minutes, but all of my logs, not just my Apache access logs, but everything. And you'll see this took about 5 seconds of results. I got about 984,478 log messages. So lots and lots of log messages here. Okay. So you can focus and be as specific and focus on what you want, or you can be as broad as you want, as far as, seeing what you want. Now, I'm going to digress for just a second and remind you, if I go into my main menu, and if I go under manage data, and if I go into collection, those of you who were in class yesterday know that these things here, and if I say, if I go ahead and, well, okay, let me shrink this down a little bit. There we go. If I say expand all or collapse all, well, forget it, I'll tell you what. These things with the triangles are my sources, my collectors. Underneath my collectors are my various sources. So for example, this AWS observability, here are my account load balancer logs. Here are my CloudTrail logs. Here are my inventory logs, my Kinesis firewall logs. These could be, like I said, logs, metrics, and all stuff. That's how the data comes in here. And in these, you'll see that we've added source categories. And so I can search by source categories, and you can structure this up so that it kind of makes sense for what you're wanting to look at. I'm looking at my AWS environment, specifically an observability environment, and then I start breaking it down by the various applications. And in the case of my CloudTrail, I might have CloudTrail logs or CloudTrail metrics, whatever. You can break it down. So that's how these source categories get defined. They're created when they create the sources. We teach this in more detail in the admin class. All right, excellent. So any questions about where that data comes from, and going back to my search here and saying, I want to look at my labs, my lab environment, my Apache, and I start typing in, it starts showing me what source categories I have. Any questions about that so far? Okay, down here, as I said, are my individual messages.
So I have a question on that one, the collection that you are seeing. I mean, I can see that in lab, but in my company's login, I don't see that option.
Okay. That's because you don't have the privileges to view collectors.
Okay.
So there are privileges that can be set that allow people to see or not see certain things.
But okay.
Yep.
So we need to check with the admin. He can add me.
You need to check with your admin, your company's admin, and ask the permission to be able to view collectors, if that's something that you need.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. To me, it's always helpful to know
Question.
what kind of data can I play with. So to me, this is kind of helpful, but I don't know. I don't know how your company's set up. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what your role is. So
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So there are two different types of logs, right? Like basically one as part of the application logs, which we have ingested into Sumo. And say, for example, if we are using a cloud, there are local host logs that resides inside the pod, right?
Correct.
So can those logs also be ingested into Sumo? Meaning if I can give a path and use a separate tag, like the meta tag, if I can use that, will I be able to still ingest those into the Sumo logs?
Yep. The answer to your question is yes and yes.
And only thing is I need to use a different meta tag instead of the source category.
Right. You can use key value pair of logs if you want. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when you create a source, bear with me a second, guys. I'm going to digress and I apologize, but I also know that many of you are into this sort of thing. Okay. So for many of you, this is kind of important. If I edit a source, this isn't a good example. Hang on. Sorry, guys. If I edit a source, besides creating the source category here, you can also add key value pairs. Now that field can be anything you want, business unit, system, whatever, and then the value might be my accounting or my HR or whatever values that you want. And then you can search by these field names and values. For those of you in the fundamentals class yesterday, you may recall that we did we injected the application, the Apache app. We grabbed something which says web server system equals Apache. That was because of these key value pairs.
Oh, okay.
So does that answer your question? I hope it does.
Yeah, because I'm just into it, so I didn't get that fully, but we'll dig into the details.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
no problem. All right.
Hey, I have a question.
Okay.
What's the database used in Sumo?
Good question. There's actually several databases used in Sumo. We're both relational, non-relational. So, but I forgot exactly which relational ones we use. I forgot.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
I'm sorry. I said I forgot which relational databases we use in Sumo. I don't know off the top of my head.
Oh, okay. But okay, one more question. I have Sumo is ingesting XML, CSV, all those log files, right? How it will be getting stored? It will compress and store in the same format, or Sumo have a different format to store in the database?
Both. It will come in the original format, but we'll also parse it out perhaps and store it in other formats. And again, guys, I appreciate these questions, but we're really starting to go off field and we're wasting time. So if you've got architecture questions, if you've got questions more about administration, stuff like that, either ask your account team or come back and take our admin class, please. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Let me get back to it here if you don't mind. Okay. Matt says Sumo uses MySQL. Thank you. Appreciate that, Matt. All right. So here I am running a query in what we've ingested, and I am looking at my Apache Access logs, and I can click on this run button, and now I can see the data that I'm getting. Now, if you click the run button at precisely the same time I do, you'll probably get the same numbers. But if you click on it a minute or so later, you might get a slightly different number because, again, your 15-minute window is a little different from my 15-minute window. Okay. Speaking of windows, up here in the 15-minute window, we can change this. We can choose 15 minutes. We can choose 60. We can choose whatever. Now, whatever's listed here is probably not what you want. Maybe you're a 45-minute person. Maybe you're a 2-hour person. So the good news is you're not constricted by just those choices. If you want, you can manually type in an expression to go back as far as you want. To go back, you start with a minus sign. That's going to take you back. And then you can type in the number and then H for hours, M for days, M for minutes, D for days, that sort of thing. So if I want to go back 2 hours, minus 2H. If I want to go back 45 minutes, it's minus 45M. So you can, I can, we can type in whatever we want to get our results. Additionally, you can also use dates, and we have a date picker here that you can use, date and time. You can type in a date. If you don't put in the year, it assumes current year. So for example, if I typed in 02/16, it would assume 2022. And then I can also add the time if I want to. So you can do it by specific dates and times, or you can do it based on relative times. And then whatever you've selected here, you'll be able to see in your recents. So as you can see, I can go back here and I can look at a lot of different recent times that I've picked. So there's the conversation about time. Well, that's part of the conversation. Now, by default, it's looking at the time based on the timestamp of your logs, right? So when your logs are ingested into Sumo Logic, we're reading the timestamp from those logs, and that's what we're displaying. If you want to, we can also look at this based on receipt time. So in the upper right-hand corner, just to the right of that blue run button, you have something here called use receipt time. There's a little informational bubble. And if you enable this and then you run this, what it's going to do is it is going to give you basically the last 15 minutes of logs, not based on the timestamp of the logs, but based on when we at Sumo received it. So here is the timestamp of the log. Notice it's 10:56:07, and we received it at 10:56:12. So about 5 seconds after it was generated, we received it. Again, this one was 10:56:07. This was 10:56:12. So, like I said, about 5 seconds after it was generated, we received it. That gives you an idea of latency. So you can either look by receipt time when we receive it, or you can probably look by your normal time of when it's timestamped to the logs. That's what that little setting is. Okay. Okay. What if the time difference is great? Then I would talk to support and find out why that time difference is great, why we're not picking them up quicker. Now, when you set up your sources and things like that, you define how often do I want to ingest and send this to Sumo. So that could be something that you've done. Could be something, a setting that is done. Hopefully it's not too late, there's not too much latency. Any questions about time? All right, back to my lab here, guys. I digress, but the good news is the digression I'm doing, we're going to talk about later anyway. So here again, I'm looking at my Apache access logs. And in my Apache access logs, I have, in this case, for the last 15 minutes, 6,758 messages. Now, what would really be nice is not only looking for the source of data that I want, but I also want to filter that data. So for example, I may want to type in the word and, a Boolean and I want to type in something like 304. I'm not going to follow the example in the book, just bear with me. So when I run this, I am now down to 880 messages. The only log messages it's showing me is where it has a 304 somewhere in the message. So you can filter down and focus and hunker down on what you want to see in this first line. This first line is the scoping line, and it consists of your metadata tag and any keyword searches that you want. Okay. I could say I want to see 304 or 200. And it's going to look anywhere in my message for 304 or 200. Notice I'm now up to about 6,097 messages. Now I put an and in there. Great. I can also type in and 404 per the exercise, the lab in the book. And again, I'm seeing here only those messages that have a 404 from my Apache access. What if I, instead of using and, I chose or? Well, then I'm looking at my Apache access logs or any log that has a 404 in it. So notice I'm up to about 25,000 results. I've got some logs in here, like my Akamai logs, that have a 404 somewhere in it, and that's why it's displaying that. Okay. So you want to be careful about your ands and ors. If you're doing a combination of metadata and keyword search, make sure your Boolean stuff is set up right. Now, another thing, you don't have to have the word and in here. If I put a space in here, it is the and is implied. So when I run this, this is the same as me typing in the word and. And is implied. If I want to use an or, I must explicitly type in an or. But if I leave a space in there, the and is implied. Test question. Okay. So this is how we can query and see and get the results that we want. All right. I'm going to sit there and again, play around here a little bit with a Boolean logic. And then we're going to take a break here as soon as we get done with this lab. So I want to see, and you can type in the word and or not, it's entirely up to you. And I want to see the word error or something that starts CHEK, and I don't care what's after that. So it could be checked in, checked out, checked, something that starts CHEK. So again, here I'm seeing anything that has the word check out, check in, and any word that has the word error in it. So I'm getting 105 messages back. So you can write nice, complicated Boolean type expressions here. Any questions so far? Okay. Yeah, Michael may have gotten a different number. That's fine. Different from mine. Yeah. That's.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. Go ahead, whoever was first.
Okay, I was just going to ask the question. In some Windows logs, you may have like the access, the user ID may be in the message multiple times and may be nested.
Yep.
How would you craft the query to find like a nested
Multiple occurrence message, multiple occurrence thing. We're going to talk about that one of the next labs coming up.
Okay.
Let me defer that question. Good question. I'm going to defer it. Next question.
Yeah, the question was, you referred to, you said the first line is a scoping line. So what are the other types of elements?
Okay, let's segue out to the slide here. That's a good question. So this, and so those of you in the class yesterday saw this slide. So the first line typically is your metadata and keyword search, what you're looking for. Then after that, we typically parse out the things that we want. Then we typically filter. Then we aggregate, and then we format. This is the normal structure of things that we do.
Question, couldn't we just parse the Mozilla?
You search for Mozilla without the metadata tag, you
Yeah.
will find Mozilla anywhere in any of the sources.
Okay, so basically on the source category, we limit our results by Mozilla and then we further parse it versus, because we can also just parse Mozilla after looking in labs Apache Access too, right?
You could, that's true. You could parse it out there too. Yeah.
Would it be slower?
Not necessarily.
Okay, I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. So any other questions real quick?
No, good.
Okay.
Negate logics when you do search.
I'm sorry?
Can we do negate? Like not?
Yes, we can do a not. It's an exclamation mark. We'll get there. We'll get there. So yeah, good question. So back to my labs here, and back specifically to, if I can get that tab out of my way. Tell you what, do it this way. There we go. What I want to do is I want to look at my Apache access logs, and there's a reason why I want to do that. So here I'm looking at my Apache access log with no keyword search. And you'll notice here, let me just do a zoom in here a little bit, make it easy for you to see. You'll notice here that my IP address and these are right here. Okay, there's my IP address. It's the start of the message. So it's the start of my message. But if I look at my Apache access logs and, I'm sorry, let me make it a war. Source category equals lab/Apache/my error logs. I want to see both of those. Let me shrink this back down just a little bit. Bear with me. Oops, other shrink. There we go. Here in my Apache access logs, as I said, my IP address is the start of my message. If I find my Apache error logs, I'm going to find that my IP address is in a different location. And for that reason, I'm going to try to show you here the Apache, here's those are access logs. There we go. Here, my Apache error log, my IP address, hang on. Some of these don't have an IP address. Here we go. There's my IP address. So it's in the body of my message. My point is, yesterday, we showed you a little bit about parse anchors. And in order for parse anchor to work, the messages have to have the same basic structure, same format. These two different sources have a different format. So I can't use that. But we can use other types of parsing mechanisms like regex and other mechanisms to parse out that information. That's what I'm trying to show you. Additionally, in here, I'm also making you aware that, again, we've got our access log and our error logs. We can see both logs at the same time. Since both logs start source category equals lab/Apache/whatever, I can also do this the same way by replacing this with a wildcard. I want to see all of my stuff under lab/Apache/whatever, and I can see all my logs that way. All right. Let me drag this. Oops. Bear with me a sec, folks. There we go. Okay. Maximize that back up. So that takes care of lab number one with one little thing. And I'm really not keen about why they put this in here, but they did. Live tail, right? You can run a live tail search. What is live tail and why do I care? Well, you can take a query like this if you want to. And if you click on the more action button here, these three vertical dots, you'll see you have an option called live tail. Now, I want to warn you, only 10 people can concurrently run live tail at a time. And I see a lot of you have run live tail. So if those of you running live tail, if you would stop so that I could run live tail, I would appreciate it. Okay. If you guys would stop so I can show you what's going to happen here. Okay. Basically, what happens is live tail shows me data as it's being ingested into Sumo logic. Okay. But again, there's a physical limitation on this that only 10 people can run live tail at a time. Who needs to run live tail? Only somebody who's setting up collectors and sources. They want to make sure the data is coming in to their collector and their source. That's why they need to run live tail. So let me just try to see if I can run it again. Okay, good. You guys have freed me up. Thank you very much. Here in a minute, there we go. I'm starting to see information as it's being ingested into Sumo logic. That is what live tail is. One other little thing while I'm here under the more, I'm sorry, let me go back to this. Also under the more action button here, there's also my cheat sheets right there that you can click on to take you out to your cheat sheets. So there we have it. All right, and that's live tail. And to me, live tail for you guys really isn't something to worry about. Now, what do you say we take a break? Let me fire up my little 10-minute timer, and I'll see you guys back when this timer gets down to 0. So have a good break, get some coffee, juice, water, and we'll see you back here in a little bit. Thank you much. While we were gone, a couple of questions have come in. Number one, somebody wants me to go over the true false questions. I will go over those in just a second. So yep, good. Thank you, Anthony. We'll do that. And then also somebody posted on the Q&A box that when they take their exam, they notice on their certificate, it expires in 1 month. Yeah, we are currently working with the vending company that produces those certificates to get that fixed. So we typically want to make sure when people are registered, the registration lasts for 1 month, but when they get certified and take it, that's supposed to last for a year or 2 years, depending. The fundamentals class is 2 years. All the other classes, all the other certifications last for 1 year. So we are in the process of fixing that. So thank you, Rick. I do understand. And like I said, we're working on it. All right. So let's get back to our labs here. And by the way, as we got to the end of lab 1, there were some questions here. So First question, and these questions are probably going to get you in the mood to take the certification exam anyway, so let's do it. Keywords are case sensitive. Is that statement true or false? Remember that when I write these and type these things in, this first line is case insensitive. So that statement is false, right? So our first line that we type in is case insensitive. Question number 2, and is implicitly implied or is explicit. You must explicitly state an or if you want to use it, right? And that's exactly what I said. So that statement is also true. Or that statement is true, excuse me. We're good. And then keywords and metadata can use wildcards for live tail. They could. That's true. That statement is true. But again, I'm not really too worried about live tail for you guys. Okay. And a lot of it depends on where you put that wild card. That's why I have a hard time with that particular question. Let's move on to lab 2. So lab 2, as you'll see, is also broken up into a few areas. All right. So basically what I'm going to do, just to save a little bit of time here, is I am, again, they're talking about searching both the Apache access logs and the Apache error logs for the last 15 minutes. Okay. And so they're going to do the lab/Apache/star. Now, let me take this second code example here. Let me swipe over it. Let me copy it. And again, you can copy it just like I can. We can go in here. We can grab ourselves a new log search and we can paste this code in. All right. All right. Now, a couple things. I want to run this one line at a time. And so I'm going to show you now how to comment out a line of code if you want to. And a little later on in the class, I'm going to show you how to comment out a whole bunch of lines of code. But for right now, if you want to comment out a line of code, it's 2 forward slashes. So you go to the preceding line, the front of the line where that pipe is, and in front of that, you type in 2 forward slashes. Or if you want to improve readability, 2 forward slashes and a space. Space is optional. So I'm commenting out these last 2 lines. So when I run this first line, I am looking and getting at my Apache error logs. I am getting my Apache access logs, all of that good stuff here. Apache error, Apache access, right? So I'm getting both those logs. And as I mentioned in the previous lab, the IP address is located differently in these logs. So I can't do a parse anchor and say, I want to start at this specific location of the message and I want to go that far. I can't do that. So we're going to use a different mechanism this time called parse regex. And parse regex, regex stands for regular expression. And regular expression is not something that Sumo created. It's something that was created by the World Wide Web Consortium. They created regex. And if you do a search for regular expressions or regex, you'll see there's a syntax for it. So what this is going to do is this is going to go through the message and it's going to look for the following pattern. 1 to 3 digits, followed by a period or decimal point, followed by 1 to 3 digits, followed by another decimal point, followed by 1 to 3 digits, followed by another decimal point, followed by 1 to 3 digits. Now you and I know that that's the pattern for a v4 version 4 IP address. And if it finds it, it's going to extract it out and it's going to call it IP address. So if I run this, and I uncomment out this line and I run this, you'll now see it's gone through these messages and it's found the IP address and it's pulled it out. It's found the IP address and it's pulled it out. It's found the IP address and pulled it out, regardless whether it's in the error or it's in the access logs. It pulled it out. The IP address is here in the access logs. Okay. Okay. Scott asked, what if there are multiple IP addresses in a single entry? I'm going to get to that, Scott. Bear with me. That's in the next slide. Okay. So good question. I'm going to table that. And then what I want to do here is I want to count by the IP addresses. Now, before I count by the IP addresses, I also want to introduce our friend here, the field browser. So the field browser displays the fields that are in here that it's parsed, that it knows about. And you'll notice next to the field browser that there's some numbers. If I click on these fields, whether they're checked or not checked, whether they're hidden or not, it pops up a menu showing me what the values are, the values and the percentage. So this makes it very easy to see, for example, here, what the referrers might be or what my status codes might be at a glance. So it makes it very, very easy. And if I want to pull that out rather than parsing that, I can simply check mark it and it pulls it right out here into my query. Okay. We'll talk about where those fields come from down here in just a few minutes. But this is my field browser. Okay. Now, the next thing, like I said, I want to do here is I want to count by IP address. And this count, like any count or sum or min or max or whatever, is going to create an aggregates tab. And so it's going to show me by IP address how many different values here I have in the last 15 minutes. So I have 200 from this IP address, 384 from this IP address, and so forth and so on. If I want to, as Odell showed you yesterday, you could sort it here, either ascending or descending. Or if you want to do it by a command line or command as part of your query, you can do a shift enter or an alt enter to add a new line. It's a shift enter if you're on a Mac or an alt enter if you're on a Windows keyboard. Type in a pipe. All of our commands get connected by a pipe. So we add a pipe, and then I can say sort by, and then I want to actually sort by underscore count. And I'll explain why underscore count, why this is an underscore and this is not in just a minute. If I don't specify a sort order, it puts it in descending order. If I do want to specify an order, either ascending or descending, I can very easily do that. Now, again, I know this because I know Sumo and I've been playing with Sumo for a long time. You may not necessarily know Sumo and all that fun stuff. So how do you find out about this command, right? You can do a Google search, Sumo logic. Sort by. And so it talks about sorting and how you can use the sort command here in Sumo logic. And there's the syntax and all that stuff. So it's pretty easy to find information in our documentation. Pure and simple. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked, could I please explain about the parse regex again? Sure. Give me a second. And I appreciate Odell putting that stuff in. Okay. Okay. Let's not talk about IP CIDR right now. That has to do with creating a range of IP addresses, and it's nothing related to this query. So hold that thought. Regex. If you go out and you search for regular expressions, you'll find that there's regular expressions out there that are standard that we can use. So these regex are something that we at Sumo Logic take advantage of. Now, we can parse using JSON, we can parse using CSV, we can parse using XML, we can parse using regular expressions. And as those of you found out yesterday, we can parse using an anchor. So the bottom line is that you can learn about regular expressions in the internet. And then we use these regular expressions in our be able to parse things out. That's as far as I want to go in regular expressions, because quite frankly, I could spend the next day talking about regular expressions. Okay. So, all right, back to my lab here for a second. So I've got this. And if I want to, I can then add a filter based on my count. So if I wanted to here, I could add a new line. Okay, where count is great. I'm sorry, excuse me, where underscore count. Let's talk about that underscore count. It's greater than 500. Okay. This operator right here is an operator. It counts things. Think of a teacher in a classroom counting their students. 1, 2, 3, 4. The results of this operator store its results in underscore operator name. So that's why we specified sort by underscore count, or we say where underscore count equals or greater than or whatever. So that's where the results are stored. That's why there's a difference between this operator count and where the results are. Okay, whenever we use an operator, unless we specify an as command, it automatically stores them in underscore, whatever that operator name is. And here I'm filtering and I only want to see anything greater than 500. If you got questions, go ahead and ask them, folks. You don't need to raise your hands.
Can you repeat again the count section?
Repeat again about the count.
Yes.
Okay, so this count is an operator. It's going to count something. That's its job. It created this aggregates tab and it counted this stuff. That's what it did. The results of that count, and when I want to sort by or look at or whatever, that is stored as underscore count. So whenever you use an operator like sum or min or max, it will typically, the results will be stored in underscore sum, underscore min, underscore max, unless you specify an as command. You'll see that later in the course.
Yeah, understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Just one more question. So can you pass the IPv6 address? Because right now I see it's for IPv4, right?
Yep. We can do IPv6, we can do IPv4. So, but this expression right here is just IPv4.
Yeah, so then for IPv6, it shouldn't be an integer D. So rather, do you have any supporting materials like where we can see and use those delimiters as part of the regex?
Yep. Do a search for regular expression IPv6, and it will give you the syntax in various products to create that expression.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And somebody tried to sort it and it didn't work for them. I assume you put a pipe in here, said sort by, and then underscore count. That should work. I don't know. I don't have really time to try to wrestle that one with you. So I'm going to keep going here if we can. All right. Excellent. So now that I've got some results here, and because I've got an aggregates tab, on my aggregates tab, you'll see I have all these different visualizations. So I can draw a line chart, a bar chart, a pie chart, whatever I want, okay? And I mentioned to you guys early in the class, I was going to show you a little bit about new dashboards. So not the purpose of this class, but I'm going to take a moment and show this to you because I think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty neat. I think you're going to like it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click this button that says add to dashboard, just like you did yesterday. And I can give this panel a name. So here I have my IP addresses over, what better yet, maybe greater than 500. And then this dashboard, I can give it any name I want to. So I'm going to start with my initials. Again, you don't have to do anything, just watch. This is not going to be on the test. I'm just going to show you something here. IP addresses, information, whatever. And what I want here is I want to get that option that says create new dashboard. I want to make sure I pick a name that's not already been used. Okay, I'm going to create new dashboard. This time I'm going to leave the switch in this position. And as Odell made a great point and pointed out yesterday, when you create something, it's going to put it in your personal folder by default. So let's go ahead and click add. Now this is going to create a new dashboard and put this in here. Now, the thing I like about these new dashboards is I can go in here and I can edit this dashboard in place. I can change its properties, its behavior, the type of dashboard that it is, change its color palettes, all of that good stuff. Additionally, in our new dashboards, you can also add a new query and a new dashboard in here. So I could add a query. In fact, I'm going to take this query here, only I'm not going to grab the by 500. I take these first 4 lines and I'm going to paste that information here. And I'm going to run this. And there's my results. By the way, I could also see what my results look like in a table if I wanted to. And I can now add this as a dashboard. And I could go up here and give this thing a name and all that good stuff. Okay. So it's very easy to build out these dashboards in this tool. And one other thing, we now have added recently in the last month or so, this ability so this dashboard refreshes itself every 30 seconds to every 1 day automatically. Otherwise, it refreshes itself based on these individual queries. So I just wanted to show you that. Take a moment to show you that. Okay. So much fun stuff to learn, so little time. All right. That pretty much is going to take care of this lab, right? This lab, the point of the, I'm sorry, lab 2, item 4, what they're trying to show you is in our query tool, you can have 2 different kinds of parsing. So here I have a parse regex, and this where it says parse by itself, this is a parse anchor. So you can put different types of parsing mechanisms in the same query. It works just fine. It works just fine. Okay. So let's move on to lab number 3. And here in lab number 3, we're going to talk about more about parsing. Okay. And so the question becomes, you know, sorry, what does the second line do? Hang on a second. The second line, I assume in this right here, that parses out the IP address.
No, I just sent you the line, the parse 200.
Okay. I'm sorry, hang on a second. Oh, I see. Okay, that is a parse anchor. It's also going to parse out the value of size from a text. So that's a parse anchor. And I really don't want to get into the specifics of parse anchor if I can avoid it, because it's, again, a long conversation. However, let me answer your question this way. Give me a second. Let me, I don't want to leave too many stones unturned. We go back to lab 2. Let me take this code here, at least the first 2 lines of this code. That's all I really want. So here I'm looking at my Apache access logs. For those of you who were in class yesterday, you did a parse anchor. And I'm going to go ahead and run this. Now, that's parse regex. Why did that? Okay, I parsed through. Okay, gotcha. Hang on. Let me grab the parse anchor. This line right here, which is the one you're questioning. Okay, what happens is in my message, because this is the same log message over and over again with different values, I can do a parse anchor. And so I can go in here and I want to anchor on something that I know is not going to change. So in all the messages, it has an HTTP 1/1. I'm going to take that, I'm going to swipe over that, and I'm going to swipe over these 2 sets of numbers, and I'm going to go here to the double quote at the end. I'm going to anchor, the start anchor is going to be my HTTP 1/1. My end anchor is going to be that double quote on the end. So when you do a parse anchor, this is how you do it. You anchor it on various things. Now, when I right click on this, I see I can parse selected text. And what I want to do is, this is my status code. So I'm going to swipe over my status code here, 304. I'm going to extract it. I'm going to call it status_code. I can call it whatever I want, but it's got to have no spaces in the name. And these fields are separated by commas. And then I want to grab this, which is my size. My size. You know, you can call it bytes, you can call anything you want, but you're calling it. And what happens when I click submit here is it builds that line, that code, that parse anchor. And now when I run it, it's going to extract out the size and the status code of all of my messages. That's how we create a parse anchor.
You got it. Thank you.
No problem. So, yeah. The 2 forward slashes were used to comment out a line. They're used to comment out a line, Melanie. So, yeah, good question. You'll use that a lot when you're troubleshooting. All right. So let's get into lab number 3, parsing options. Now, let me do this if you don't mind. Let me go out here. And you may have noticed in our queries, in our field browser, there's all kinds of fields in here, all kinds of fields. Where do those fields come from? I'm going to get into that. Let me grab a new query and let me go after a specific source category. One you've never heard of before, probably don't really care about, and that's fine. Just humor me for a moment. So I'm going to grab from my snort logs, my labs here. And I'm going to look at the last 15 minutes worth of logs. Now, the point is, here in my field browser, I have time, I have message, and I have my built-in metadata tags. Collector, source, source category, source name. There we go. All right. So these are my built-in metadata tags. These come with every source, every collector, everything. We can use these. But if I have these and these are what comes standard in stock, why did I see all those others? I saw all those others for two reasons. One reason is we have the ability in Sumo Logic to do something called field extraction rules. And what field extraction rules are, if I go into my main menu, I go into manage data, I go into logs, and I go into this section called field extraction rules. You can, I can, we can create a rule that says when we ingest certain data, we extract out those fields, therefore making it easy to search, easy to find, easy to deal with. Let me show you what a field extraction rule looks like here. If I edit this particular field extraction rule, basically any data that comes from lab/Apache/access, you'll see I'm doing a series of regular expression parsing where I'm parsing out certain fields. This is why when I do lab/Apache/access, I see all these fields. And I can then just grab source IP or status code or whatever. We teach you how to do field extraction rules in our admin class, right? This is not something that an analyst typically does. They don't set up field extraction rules. An administrator does. Okay. But these field extraction rules create for us in our messages tab in our field browser all of these extra fields. That's one of the ways that these fields get in here. Another way that a field gets in here is if I look at a JSON source, a JSON log source. Now, CloudTrail is an example of a JSON log source. Source category equals lab/AWS/CloudTrail. Now, JSON is, of course, the newest darling of the log formatting. It's got a key value pair type structure. Because in Sumo Logic, if I click on this gear setting, there's a setting here called auto parse mode, and then you'll see it's set. It's turned on. So what happens is when we get to a JSON log, we automatically parse out all these fields and we make them available. So if you want to see those fields in your query, all you've got to do is check mark them. And voila, you don't have to worry about parsing them out. It's already parsed out. You're available for you to use. Saves you a bit of time. Okay. Now, if I turn this switch off and I'm dealing with JSON and I run this again, you'll see that a lot of my fields have gone away. I've got my standard, fields here. So if you're parsing JSON, it automatically, by default, shows you all the fields. If it's another data source and we've got field extraction rules, you will see the fields that way. If you don't, then we've got to parse them. We've got to parse them somehow using parse anchors or parse regular expressions or parse something. And there's ways to parse this stuff out. Adroff, that's correct. Yes, same logic that we did for anchoring in the last lab. Yes, sir. Okay. All right. So that's what it's trying to tell me here with regards to this first bullet point. Okay. The second bullet point here in lab 3 is the no drop option. All right. Let's talk about this no drop option for a second. Let me take this code right here, copy it. Actually, excuse me. Let me take this code right here, copy it, and let me go ahead and create a new query. In fact, I'm seeing a lot of tabs open here. It's starting to get a little busy. So as I showed you before, I think somebody asked, I can click on any one of the 3 dots on any of the tabs and say close all tabs and kind of clean it up. And I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to grab a new log search and I'm going to paste this code in. Now, let me comment out this line so that when I run this, in our Apache error logs, you'll see I've got different kinds of error messages. I've got one that has a client IP address, This one does not have a client IP address. This one is an error message of sort. So if I wanted to, I could do a parse anchor that says I want to parse based on my client IP. And that's what this is doing. I'm taking this, I'm right-clicking on it, I'm parsing selected text, and I'm calling it client IP. That's what this line of code right here is doing. Now, the thing I want you to be aware of before I run this is right now I have 1,875 messages. 1,875 messages. When I add that parse statement in there and I run this, I am suddenly down to 849 messages. Why? When I do a now that could be problematic. So one of the switches that you can throw on a message if you're getting strange results is you can add to the command no drop. And by doing no drop, it's not going to drop any messages. I'm back to my original count of messages. And now I can see that some of these don't have an IP address. And actually, in some cases, I'm also pulling the port, which I should probably fix, but that's another story. Okay. But the point is this no drop prevents you from dropping those things, prevents you from filtering those things. In fact, if you see a test question, it looks something like, if you're getting predictable and unexpected results when you're parsing, what should you do to fix it? And one of the answers is to add a no drop in there. And that is the correct answer. Okay. So that's no drop. Question, Raul. Go ahead and ask your question. Don't need to raise your hand.
Yeah, can you repeat again what is the no drop option, why it is used?
Yep. Okay. When I comment out this entire line, right, before I have parse, right, I have 1,573 messages. If I parse something out of here, any message that does not meet that requirement will automatically get deleted, get dropped. In fact, let's just make it easy for you. I mean, not comment it on, let's just go ahead and delete it. So when I parse something out, any message that doesn't meet this format gets deleted, gets dropped. So I'm down to 900 messages. Okay. If you don't want to drop and delete things, then you add the no drop command. By adding the no drop command, it will then show you all of the original messages, and it just shows you and extracts out the client IP where there's a client IP, but it doesn't filter, it doesn't remove. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yep.
John, quick question. Where was the auto parse option at?
Okay, that auto parse option was over here in the gear.
In the
auto
gear.
parse mode. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. By the way, again, folks, don't need to raise your hands. Just go ahead and ask your questions.
Yeah, so it's like, hi, very good demo, by the way. Thank you. Is it like, yeah, is it like not null in SQL?
Well, this is kind of SQL-ish, but it's actually our own proprietary, query
Right.
language.
So it's like not showing what is not relevant, no drop.
Okay, yep. It's showing you potentially what you could be deleting, what you could be dropping. And maybe you want to, maybe you don't want to.
Right.
For example,
yep.
If I want to, actually, let me leave this where it is, sorry. Let's say I want to parse out these messages, right? I'm sorry, let me get you a good example here. My mod log SQL. If I want to parse out my mod log SQL messages, and if I don't have that no drop in there, it's gonna remove those. I will never see these. And that's what they're really trying to show you here in the lab. So in the lab, as we add this line in, Control C.
So it's like includes the null anyway. Right?
Correct. So if I don't have the no drop in here, if I don't have the no drop in here, then what happens is it evaluates that first line, it eliminates all the other messages, which means I don't see any of my mod log SQL messages.
Right.
I don't get any results. If I add the no drop, now what happens is it allows me for these messages to see, and now I can, here's my client IP and here's my message, and it lets me parse out. It doesn't delete unwanted messages.
Okay.
And like I said, if you're doing parsing, you're having problems, remember to add the no drop option in there, see what you're getting rid of. That might be a big help.
Well, it's a pipe, right? So it's kind of a elliptical here, but the pipe sign at the beginning of each line is pretty much significant. And it
The
doesn't
pipe
show-
sign means I've got another command I want you to run.
Yeah, and it's piping it. I mean, it's like filtering it line after line, right?
Yep, correct.
So, yeah, that's essential. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
In that last example, essentially you just filtered too far, right? Without the no drop, you were saying that
Right.
show me everything, right? It didn't have the messages. and
Without the
then-
no drop, I wouldn't be able to see these.
Yeah, in my head, it's like you filtered too far, you parsed too far.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I did an error. Let me
Yeah.
see what I didn't drop. Okay, add everything back.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So that was one of the conversations there in lab 3 they wanted to mention to you. Okay. In lab
have a
6, yes, ma'am, go ahead.
If you're gonna use the no drop, why you can't just delete the whole line and just finish with the original?
Why not just delete that or comment that out, right? That's your question?
No, why don't just leave the underscore source category lab anchor error if you want to just pull everything?
Well, then here's the question. What is it you're trying to do, right? What we're trying to do, our goal is we want to grab the IP addresses. We also want to grab the messages. So,
Okay.
we need to make sure that we don't use one to filter out the other. And that's what that no drop is.
And we want to do
Alright.
that only on the Apache error source,
Right.
not
Only
any
on the
other.
Apache error source. Yeah. If I grabbed everything, right? If I turned this into a star, wow, that could turn into, lots and lots of different logs. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay, good. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So what happens when you don't use the no drop option and the things you have dropped, how can you find out what you've dropped exactly?
The only way you can find out what you dropped is by adding the no drop option and
Yes.
looking. Right?
Okay.
In fact, you can also,
Yep, got you.
little conversation, sidebar conversation here. Again, on this data in the Giro account over here, you can export this stuff if you want to. So I would write an expression that says, what am I dropping? What am I getting rid of? I'd export that out and look it over.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay. All right. All right. So in this lab, there's a couple other conversations they want to have. And one of the conversations I want to have here in step 7, I'm going to copy this code out. And I am going to paste this code into a new log search. Okay. And I'm going to show you, first of all, how to comment out a whole bunch of lines at the same time. This is something you're probably really going to enjoy. It's going to be helpful for you. So if you put your cursor anywhere in before the pipe on this, in my case, the second line, and if you're on a Mac keyboard, if you hold down the Option key, or if you're on a Windows keyboard, hold down the Alt key, your icon will change to a plus sign like mine does. And then if you use your mouse and you drag a line down, you'll see that it drags a line, and whatever you type is now going to be across all lines. So if we want to comment, we type in 2 forward slashes or 2 forward slashes and a space if you want. And that's how you can comment out a whole bunch of lines. That's how we do it. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm looking at my GitHub logs. GitHub is a code repository, and I'm specifically looking for the log messages that have the word committer in them. Why committer? Because I know if you commit something, you've got to provide an email address. And I then want to be able to parse out that email address. So if I look at these JSON logs, if I looked at them and expanded them, I would see that in here there is a, there's an email address and all that fun stuff in here somewhere. Okay, so there a question? Go ahead, ask your questions.
All right. How do you get the line to go down again? Sorry, I missed that.
How do I get the line to go down? Okay.
Yeah.
So what you do is, again, you put your cursor in here. You hold down either your Option or your either your Option or your Alt key, and then you drag. So you drag left mouse button, drag a line down, and that will drag and create the line for you. So it's a little bit of a contortionist exercise.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You got it? Okay. Any other questions?
Just a comment, John. So going back to one of the other person's questions about the no drop and see what was dropped. I
Yeah.
think that the is blank is a good example to go over to show that you can specify, you know, if you want to see the things that was dropped, you can go where it is blank in order to have to specify.
Right. And we have a function here is blank to filter out where things are blank or not. So, and by the way, you can put an exclamation mark in front of this. So it says where not is blank. So you can use this along with an exclamation mark to not it. So, yeah. Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Apologize. I'm just trying to cherry pick what I, trying to get back on track here. Raul, is there a question, sir?
So parsing is similar like the grep command in the Linux.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Any other questions here, folks? Anybody else? Yeah. So good. All right. Okay. Apologize. We're being long-winded here, but we will get through this. Just bear with me about 30 minutes and we will get through this. Okay. Obviously a lot of good questions, a lot of good stuff. So here I'm going to uncomment out the line and you'll see that we're doing a parse anchor. That's a parse anchor to extract out the email address. In some cases, we're getting out an email address. In some cases, we're getting out the a GUID, right? Then we're going to do a parse. We're going to do a parse field equals. So the point is, and the point of this part of this lab is, if you parse something and then you want to parse it again, you're going to use the parse field equals command. Okay. So when I do this parse field equals command, I'm parsing something I've already parsed. And so what I'm doing here is I'm saying parse field equals email. And I want to sit there and look at what's before the @ sign and what's after the @ sign. When it's before the @ sign, I'm going to call users. What's after the @ sign, I'm going to call domain. And so here I can see, here's my domain, here's my email, here's my users. Why did it show up in this order? Because it showed up alphabetically. That's what it does by default. DO comes before EM, which comes before US. If I want to change this order, and I'll show you that right now, I'm going to add a new line by doing a Shift Enter, Alt Enter, type in a pipe, and I can use the fields command, FILDS, and I can specify the order of the fields that I want. So if I want users first, then I want domain, then I want email, I can specify that. And when I run this, now you will see they are in the order that I specified. By default, they're in alphabetical order. Okay. And then, of course, we can then aggregate, count by the username. And if we want to, we can filter by the top 5, top 10, top whatever. You'll find that we've got top and bottom functions that you can use to see the top whatever or the bottom whatever. We can also use top K or bottom K for ranking of those functions. So lots of different things here that we can do, that we can use. Okay. Is there an undo feature to correct mistakes? No, Rick, there is not. Okay. And then the question is, how does the system know what to undo? But it would make an interesting feature, an interesting enhancement. All right, so that's what this parse field exercise is, to show you that if you want to parse an existing parsed field, you want to parse further a parsed field, then you're going to use the parse field equals command. And then item number 8, this is the one that you guys have all been asking about. So let's take a look once again at our friends, the snort logs. So let me again grab a new log search, paste this stuff in, hit the enter key. There's my log search. What you'll notice though in this message is there's actually 2 IP addresses. Here's an IP address, and then here's a port. There's an IP address, and there's a port. So what happens is when we do a parse regex for IP address, by default, it finds the first IP address and parses it out and says, I'm done. Doesn't look for a subsequent another IP address. And you guys have asked about this before. What if I have multiple situations? Okay. One little thing I want to point out, right now, there are 1,368 messages over the last 15 minutes here. I point it out for a reason. The way that you find and parse out multiple occurrences is you add the multi-switch, M-U-L-T-I. Multi-switch. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to go through this first message. It's going to say, hey, I guess what? I got two of these. I got two things that match. So what it does, it automatically doubles this message. It copies this message and pastes it in here. That's why your results will double. The good news is we don't charge you by the number of results you get in a query, right? We charge you by what you ingest. So this doesn't affect your billing at all. But now what it did is it made a copy of every message where there's more than one IP address. And in the first message, it parsed out the first IP address. Then it went to the next message and it parsed out the second IP address. Then it went to the next actual message, duplicated it, parsed out the first IP address, parsed out the second IP address. So for those of you who asked, how do I get rid of multiple occurrences or how do I deal with multiple occurrences or something? This is how you do it. The multi-switch. Okay. Somebody asked, what does SNORT stand for? SNORT is a firewall device, firewall application. So these are firewall things that we're seeing here. Attempted information leak and security and all that stuff. So
It's
could we do a regex in one line? Yes, there's other ways to do this, Nicholas. Yes, you could do a regex, or not even a regex. You could parse it out and even do a parse anchor if you wanted to and pull out the two IP addresses and the two ports or whatever you want. But we're showing you with a I'm sorry. We could not do a parse regex without the multi-switch. We got to have the multi-switch. We want both IP addresses, but we could have done a parse anchor in this case. That would have worked.
Yeah, John, in this particular example, you're kind of losing the context of the source and destination IP by splitting the two messages.
You are.
So a different parse language might make more sense.
That's correct. So to answer your question, here's what I would do. Okay. I'm going to do a parse anchor. So I'm going to swipe over here, grab all this lovely stuff, right click, parse selected text. No, whoops, excuse me. Extract that. Again, your mileage may vary. So I would do something like this if that's what you're trying to do. And again, I agree with you. And so this is what it would look like. And of course, I could use my field commands to change the order here if I want.
Okay.
So yeah, but the point of the exercise, as you said, is to point out if you've got multiple occurrences or something, how to deal with that. And you guys have asked about that. So
it's simpler too for people who don't know regex.
Yep. Yeah. Good. All right.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there some way to show both IP and port in the same field? Sure, I could extract it out that way. Call it source IP and port. And then I could also substring it if I wanted to too. I can substring and concatenate and all that good stuff. So yeah, lots of stuff. All right. I already talked about field extraction rules, and field extraction rules allow me to pre-parse out those values as we ingest the stuff. So a couple of questions here for you. CSV, JSON, split key values are all parsing operators. That statement is true. I realize I didn't talk about key value or split, but they are parsing operators. True. Once a field has been parsed, it cannot be parsed any further. What do you guys think? Is that true or false?
False.
False. But you're going to use the parse field equals command. But yes, that statement is false. And then 3, fields parsed by the field extraction rules are available in the field browser. What is that one? True or false?
True.
True. Very good. Absolutely correct. Good. All right. Now, the good news is the rest of these labs flow fairly quickly. So I realize I'm already behind time. I apologize for that, but let me get this stuff done. Okay. So here, what we want to do is we want to talk about conditional operators, if statements. All right. So I'm going to take this lovely code here, if you don't mind. I'm going to copy it. And I am going to paste it into a new log search. Okay. Obviously, we're looking at our Apache access logs. Obviously, we're parsing out our status codes. This other stuff, I am going to, again, holding down my Option key on my Mac keyboard or my Alt key on my Windows keyboard, to drag a line and comment out these 3 lines. So here I'm seeing my status code. Great, wonderful. Now, what this first if statement is doing is it is going through and it's going to create a field called successes. And it's going to look at the status code. And if the status code is equal to a value of 200, it's going to put a 1 in successes. Otherwise, it's going to put a 0. So the if statement reads condition, true value, false value. That's how that works. So I created successes, and anywhere I've got a 200, it put a 1 in there, right there. Otherwise, it put a 0 in there. Then I'm going to create a new field called client errors. And if it equals a 404, I'll put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'll put a 0 in there. And then if I want to here, I can count up, do a sum of my successes, which I'm then going to call success count. I'm going to sum up my client errors. I'm going to call that client error count. And because I'm doing a sum or any sort of aggregation, I get this aggregates tab. And so I can quickly see how many of these I got, how many of those I got. And if I wanted to figure out a percentage or whatever, I could certainly do that. But the real purpose here was talk about those conditional operators.
From a billing perspective, it doesn't matter how many times we end up searching through the logs or manipulating data, right? It's just based off of how much we're ingesting. So literally you could play in it all day and not have anything affect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And no offense, when you get new logs, you got to investigate them anyway. You're going to be playing around with them. You're going to be parsing them. You're going to be parsing them lots of different ways to see where's my information? What's the valuable information I need out of here? What's it telling me? What is this log telling me? Absolutely.
Can we use strings instead of 1 and 0s?
We can use strings instead of 1s and 0s, but if you do that, instead of using an equality operator equals, you're going to use a matches operator. So down here with this optional exercise, notice they're doing a string match. And so they're doing putting things in quotes.
Okay, cool. Now, that was not my question, but it's a good answer because I had no idea. What I mean is the 1 and a 0 after, which are like.
Oh, yeah, you could have put cat, dog, whatever you want. Yeah. Right. Just put them in quotes.
Right. Okay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you could have put okay, good, excellent, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Would the sum still work okay, John?
Yeah, it should.
The sum, what you want to do is do a count of those, not a sum. Because they're not numeric. You want to do a count of those values.
Gotcha.
Yep. So good questions. Moving on to lab 5, subquery. Here's a fun one. And this is kind of showing you a little bit of the power of Sumo. I have a simple query that I'm going to run where I want to look at my Apache access logs. Let me clear these things out of here so I can start fresh. And you'll notice that if I run this for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, I don't care how many minutes, I am seeing a whole slew of different IP address, different IP address, different IP address, different IP address, so forth and so on. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at my error logs, and I'm looking for a specific error. So here I'm going to look at my Apache error log for the file does not exist. And I want to extract out the IP address for that. I'm going to parse that out. So let me copy this and let me talk through this in just a second. So again, I'm looking at my Apache error. I'm looking specifically for the message file does not exist. I'm trying to find somebody who's looking for a file that does not exist, or somebody who may be hacking my system, quite frankly. Then I'm going to parse out of that my time, my error, and my IP. I'm going to do a parse anchor here on the second line. Now, it just so happens that in this example, with this data, we only have one IP address we get back, the same IP address, okay? But Normally, if it was more than one, I'd probably want to count it. Might help I put a pipe back in there. And then if I only want to pass back one value, again, we're lucky. There's only one IP address in this data, but it's possible I might have more than one. But if I want to, I can use the top or the top K function to see that I only get one value back. Now, I could pass back all the values, or I could pass back a single value. They're just showing you an example of passing back a single value here. I haven't passed anything back yet, but I'm basically setting up a single value. Remember, we did top earlier, and top 5 shows us the top 5, top 2. Top K also gives us a ranking value. Top K gives us ranking value. Now, what I want to do is I want to take this IP address and I want to have it search this query with that IP address to see what this IP address has been doing in my access logs. That's the goal of my subquery. I want to be able to take two queries and bring them together so that I can filter one based on the other. And how we do that is really quite simple. The syntax for my child query is it starts and ends with brackets. And it has a word subquery and colon on it. And then also my last statement will be the command compose. And then what do I want to pass back? In this case, IP. And then keywords. Now, keywords is a placeholder that says, remember that in my normal query, I have my metadata source category and my keywords. So this is going to put this result of this subquery into my top line of my parent query. And so therefore, it's going to show me results only for that IP address. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to take my subquery, and here in my subquery, I'm going to add that compose line. Pipe, the command is compose. What I want to pass back, which is the IP, and I'm going to type in the word keywords so that it puts it in the keywords area of that parent query. When I run this, what you'll notice is in my aggregates tab, because I'm doing this count, is it has put this IP address in parentheses in a wrapper. And so we're going to pass that wrapper back to our parent query. So we're going to take this little subquery here. We're going to copy all of it. We're going to go back to our parent query. I'm going to add a couple of new lines here. I'm going to add a bracket. I'm going to go to the end here. I'm going to add a closed bracket. I'm going to go to my upper bracket here. I'm going to type in the word subquery with a colon. Then I'm going to paste my code in. So I have basically said, this is my subquery. I want you to run this first. Then I want you to take the results and compare it against my access. So when I run this, I am looking at my Apache access logs for that specific IP address to see where they have been. These are my Apache access logs. There is that specific IP address. I can see what they've been looking at, what they've been trying to do. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a subquery. Question, can I have a subquery inside of another subquery? What do you think? Yes, I can. So you can nest subqueries inside of other subqueries if you want to, okay? Now, obviously, these subqueries have to be executed first, and then they'll release control back to the parent query and so forth, so on. So this may take my query a little bit longer to run. But how many times have you guys been interested in about a specific customer, a specific user, a specific thing, and you want to see what that specific thing has been doing with other logs? So this is a pretty good example of that. Questions? By the way, if you want to know more about subqueries in our labs here, we have a link that I'll open up in a new tab here, and I'll go to that new tab. So here's all the information about subqueries. You want to pass in parameters and do all arguments and stuff, you can certainly do that. All kinds of fun stuff here with subqueries. In fact, you're going to find, like I said, in our product, as we go through other things, you're going to find all kinds of neat things in our documentation that will be helpful to you, I hope.
So the keyword is the keyword. right? The
Keyword
subtopic
is
brings
literally
up as
keyword. That's correct. That's,
Right.
that's absolutely correct. And the reason that's in there is to make sure it applies it to this upper line.
Mm.
Yep.
It's not very intuitive.
I'm sorry?
It's not very intuitive.
I agree. It's not as intuitive as I like it to be. You know, I wish we had a good interface where I could drag queries and just drag and drop them in and stuff like that, but we're not there yet. Okay. We're not there yet. So now lab 6, another favorite, plotting clients on a map. For this, we are going to use the geo lookup operator. And if you want to, I'm going to right click on this geo lookup operator. I'm going to open this up in a new tab. And basically what happens is we have a partnership with a company called Newstar. And if we send them an IP address, Newstar here, we send them an IP address, they will send us a latitude and longitude. They could also send us the continent, country code, country name, and all that stuff. And then if I want to display it on a Mapbox plot, one of those visualizations, those map visualizations, I also need to have latitude, longitude, and count. So those are the 3 things I need to have if I want to display a map chart or a Mapbox plot. How we get the latitude and longitude, we're going to get that from Newstar. We're going to send them a query. We're going to use this line type thing right here. Here's the IP address, and we're going to sit there and it's going to give back latitude, longitude, and I can also add other things in here, country, country name, that sort of thing. So again, here's the documentation. Here's the lab. So let me go ahead and grab the code from this lab. Paste it into a new log query. Let me comment out these lines. Again, I'm looking at my Apache access logs. I know, terribly excited by now. I'm parsing out the client IP address, doing a parse anchor. Then what I'm doing here is I am using this lookup command. And the syntax is lookup, and then the fields you want, latitude, longitude, country, whatever, separated by commas, from geolocation on IP equals, and then whatever you called the IP address. We called it client IP. So we're passing in this client IP to Newstar, and it's now giving us the latitude and the longitude. If I wanted to, again, I could have asked for country, whatever. I could have asked for region, oops, country. I'll tell you what, score region. I'm sorry, country name. I am here in a football scholarship today. There we go. Country name, okay. And then in order to be able to display this as a Mapbox plot, I have to at least count by my latitude and longitude. I need latitude, I need longitude, and I need count. I could have also included in this, like I said, country name. But I don't need it to display it as a Mapbox plot. Since I have latitude, I have longitude, and I have count, I have this icon enabled. I can click on that icon enabled, and lo and behold, it shows me my world map and my data on a map. And I can drill in and see where my data is going. Or I can zoom out. You don't necessarily need this sort count, but it kind of makes things a little more efficient. I sorted in alphabetical order.
Hey, John,
if I do not have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Quick question, John. If you wanted to go to one of those areas and see details just for that one, how would you get that information?
Okay. Well, obviously you could filter by country name or whatever, depending how you're trying to go. You know,
right,
the trick is how specific is it? You know, where, remember, you may recall yesterday in class, we filtered by the United States, but, you know, typically you can go in here and, you know, you can drill in, and they're typically by, you know, tier 1 locations. So for IP addresses. So it's not going to take you to somebody's house and address. In fact, Mapbox, the company that made this map, occasionally used to have issues where they would put things in bodies of water. It would plot it in the body of water, and so they fixed all that. So,
Joe, how'd you get the map again?
Again, map is this icon right here. If you have latitude and longitude and count, you have this icon enabled, you click on it.
So basically, there's no way to choose that 65 and see just exactly who those 65
right. Well, now
are.
what I would do, and maybe I'd run a query or something to see, you know, specifically what those 65 are, who the 65 are, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Information about that. Yep.
So what's the purpose of the commenting out though initially, right? Why are we going to comment out? Why couldn't we just run it with
I
everything?
comment things out because I want to tell you the story one line at a time. So it's more of a presentation thing for me than it is. There's no value to comment things out unless you're troubleshooting. If you're troubleshooting, then comments can be handy.
Okay, I was
Things
just
aren't
curious,
working.
just thinking about it like, okay, best practice, like, well, okay, thanks.
Yeah, now you know, how, you know, the old adage of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Well, if you've got a long query, right, and you're having problems with it, you may want to comment out parts to see what's working, what's not working.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Same way you typically
John, it's
do
kind of
programming code. So let's
It's
see
kind of
your
a
program.
workflow thing too. You could be building your query and you want to see how it looks a little different, but you don't want to delete that out and put it in a notepad somewhere else. You just comment it out for that
The
particular
other thing you can do,
workflow, right?
and from a practical perspective, is you can put comments in here. You know, now we parse out the, you know, IP, you know, so you can actually put comments in here to explain to people what this code is doing. Sumo logic is so cool. Whatever. So put comments in there, leave documentation, breadcrumbs. The examples that we're going to show you tomorrow are very long and very impressive here. Okay. Okay, good question. When you save a query, can you save the comments with it? Absolutely. When I go in here, right, and I do a save as, it's going to save it as it's written here with comments and everything. When it executes, the comments are ignored. Raul, go ahead and ask your question, sir.
So you have written lookup with the geolocation. So what is this?
What is what?
Lookup latitude, longitude from
This
geo.
is the command that we use to do this lookup. Basically, what this lookup command does is it says, go to this URL, which is actually newstar. It's a shortcut for a newstar link that we have. Pass in this IP address as their IP address, and go to this location and give me this information.
It means that geolocation is not part of the log message.
I'm not sure you understand what you mean by log, not part of the log method.
Log message means those, those actually written via the search query. That particular geo slash location is
This
not a part of
information
the
is
message.
not part of your log query. That's true. It's not part of
Yes.
your log. It's not contained in your log. We're looking this
Okay.
up from another source.
Another source. Okay. Yeah.
We're looking it up
Understand.
through Newstar, partner of ours.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. What's the difference between sort by and sort? It's the same command, basically. We just add the by. So good question. No real difference. The difference is one has the word by in it, one doesn't. They basically both behave the same.
Hey, John, do we get charged for sending the information to the third part?
Good question. No, you don't. Nope. That's cost we bear.
Okay.
Another thing, while we're on that same subject, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, we also have a partnership with CrowdStrike. And for those of you who have CrowdStrike, you know that that's an expensive little piece of software. CrowdStrike allows you to take an IP address and it tells you about the malicious activities of that IP address, whether it's a known threat, who the actors are, et cetera, et cetera. We have a partnership with CrowdStrike. And when you send stuff through CrowdStrike through our tool, again, you don't have to pay for that. We take care of that. That's part of us. It's part of our relationship with CrowdStrike. So we provide you value right off the bat. All right. Any other questions? Lab number 7, the difference in the smooth operators. Here we go. Give you some code examples. Okay. The name of the service that I mentioned, CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike allows you, me, whatever. It's a service that you can buy that takes an IP address and tells you about its threats and issues, and is it a known IP address that's been known to be used for hacking and other things. And so we have a subscription to CrowdStrike that we make available to our customers. So yeah. All right, so let me take this code here. These two examples here are real simple. You paste this code in. Now what I'm doing, I'm looking at my Apache access logs, and then I'm breaking things up in 1 minute intervals. That's what time slice 1 minute is. And again, this time slice is an operator. My results are stored in underscore time slice. So I'm going to count by my time slice. I'm going to sort by my time slice, put it in ascending order. Let me comment this out for a second. And so I'm looking here at my various time slices. They are in order. Here is my count. Now, what my difference operator does is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to take this number minus this number and give me this number. This number minus this number, give me this number. This number minus this number, give me this number. And you may ask yourself, why do I care? Well, if I display it as a line and I'm dealing with inventory management, let's say that we're talking about COVID and the hospital beds and all that stuff. This is my number of COVID patients that went up in the hospital, which means my number of available beds went down. Okay. And then as my patients, I get less patients, my number of available beds go up. So anything dealing with inventory management, this difference operator can be handy for you. Okay. Now, one other thing, while we're talking about this difference operator, again, I'm using a line chart, which is great, but I can also go into the settings here if I want to, and I can play around here a little bit. So I can change the colors. I can change the axes here if I want to. I can change the series. So for example, here, I want my difference, instead of it being a line chart, maybe I want it to be a column chart. And instead of using my default x-axis, maybe I wanted to use a secondary axis. So now over here is my secondary axis where I see my difference operator, and now I see my bar charts. So again, this is just something you guys can be aware of, you guys can play with. All right. The other example in here is a moving average, or the smooth operator. And again, if I take this code and if I paste it in here, and if I comment out this last line, again, I'm basically doing something very similar. I'm going to my Apache access codes. I'm only looking for messages that have a status code of 404, and they're in my messages here. Then I'm creating my time slice of 1 minute. I'm doing a count, but I'm going to call it error count instead of underscore count. So this count as error count renames it. It applies an S clause to it. So it's going to be called error count, and I'm breaking it down by my time slices. Then I'm going to sort my time slices in ascending order. Now, what the smooth operator does, and you can actually look at the documentation for the smooth operator, but what it does is it takes this number, in this case, divides it by 1, takes these first two numbers, divides it by 2, takes these first three numbers, divides it by 3, first four numbers, divides it by 4. Does this until it gets to about 10 numbers. Once it gets to 10 numbers, it adds them up, divides by 10. Then it deletes the oldest number, adds the next number, divides by 10. Again, adds the next number, deletes the old number, divide by 10, adds, divide by 10. So when I see this, I can see kind of a linear line here of how things are behaving. So again, I'm looking, maybe this is my sales or this is my cash flow. I can see the individual peaks and valleys, which is nice, but I can see what my average balance is, or my average sales. And in my case, I can see that my sales numbers are trending down, which of course probably is not a good thing. Now, if this is my cost and it's trending down, that is a good thing. So it gives you an idea here of a rolling average. And again, maybe you want to, look a little bit more, maybe more data here. Somebody changes to 3 hours looking at my logs, and maybe get a,
Is that to analyze variability?
It is designed to analyze variability, smooth it out a little bit, give you a rolling average.
Can you change the number count from 10 to say 20?
Yep. So what happens is, if you look at the smooth operator, you'll find there's some arguments that you can change and pass. Yep. It's a good question. Labs 8 and 9 go together. They are about log reduce and log compare. So let's do this. Let's go out and visit our friend, the snort log. Now, somebody asked the question earlier, what's the snort log all about? Well, snort log tells us what's going on with regards to our firewall. So I can see somebody's trying to access a config file here. Somebody's trying to detection of a network scan. Somebody's trying to find attempted information, like again, that config file. Well, the trick is if I look at, say, the last 60 minutes of logs here, right? I see that I've got over 6,000 logs to go through, which means over a day's period of time, I got lots of logs to go through. I don't want to read all these logs. And you don't have to. With Sumo logic, you and I can click log reduce, and that's going to add this pipe that says pipe log reduce. And then with that pipe log reduce, it's going to combine those like messages together for me. So if I look at my messages, here are my messages. That hasn't changed. But in my signatures tab, I can now see that out of my 6,121 messages, 3,093 are from this particular message. Somebody's been modifying the config, that CONF file. Okay. Now, what's interesting also, you'll see I've got some actions here. I got thumbs up, thumbs down, and I've got a relevant score. By default, if I don't put a thumbs up or thumbs down on it, it will calculate that relevant score based on the count and based on the severity. So the highest relevant score is going to be a 10, a lowest relevant score is going to be 0. However, when I investigate this, now that I see I've got 3,000 of these darn things, when I investigate this, I discovered that it was because we were doing updates to software, and that updates to software were modifying this file. So it really isn't an error. So I can give it a thumbs down, and that will change its relevant score to 0. So I know I really don't have to worry about this. This was just kind of a one-off type thing. I can also go down here and I can see, other things. And again, maybe an email address, sensitive data was released, 596 of these. Maybe I want to bump that up. Maybe that is an important thing. Somebody's trying to get, sensitive data, so I can change its relevant score to 10. But the point is, this log reduce combines my like messages together. Where you see these stars, that's where the values of these individual messages are different. By the way, if I wanted to see the 3,000 messages, I could click on this. It would then show me those underlying 3,000 messages. Also, for test purposes, you'll see that you can also look at a specific message by host, by name, by category, plus or minus 1, 5, or 10 minutes. So you want to remember plus or minus 1, 5, or 10. And you also want to remember category, name, and host. Because there are going to be 2 questions on the exam that deal with those two things. So if I wanted to, I could say this message really kind of indicates an attack. I want to look at plus or minus 5 minutes, and it will then open that message up, and I can see what happened 5 minutes before, what happened 5 minutes after. Okay. There you go. Thank you, Raul.
Quick questions. Does Sumo does obfuscation of logs for sensitive data?
Sorry. What do you mean by obfuscation?
Obfuscating data, like in the logs, maybe we have sensitive data. We want to hide it.
Yes, you can do that. So like, for example, if you get credit card and stuff like that, when you bring in your sources and you define your sources, we talked about this in the admin class, you can create rules and say, I want to mask this out, or I want to exclude this data, or whatever. So for example, credit card data, personal data, you can filter that stuff out.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, good question, not related to this course. All right. So that's log reduce. Now log reduce is kind of cool in the fact that, actually, let me go back here. Sorry about that. I forgot to. Helps if I could type. So log reduce is kind of nice. Now, the problem with log reduce, though, is it combined my like messages, and let me change this to like 60 minutes or maybe 3 hours, just so I get a better sampling size. It tells me, what things to kind of focus on, but it doesn't really necessarily give me a good indication of whether or not I've got a real serious threat here or not. Okay. So one of the other tools that we have is something called log compare. And what log compare is, it will compare timeframes. So if I click log compare by default, it does a time shift for 24 hours. So basically what's happening is it's going back from now back 3 hours. It's going to do a log reduce on that. Then it's going to go back 24 hours, go back 3 hours, and do a log reduce on that. And then it's going to compare them. And when it compares them, it says, did it get much better? Did it get much worse? Now, again, as I look at these, they didn't go up or down very significantly. This one went up, down, up very significantly. So again, this is something that happened today, more today than yesterday, and it's something I probably want to focus on, right? But most of these aren't significant and changed. Some of these are. So this is another way of trying to determine whether or not you've got issues and problems. The other thing you might see instead of a percentage is you might see the word gone. Gone means it was there 24 hours ago, but it's not there now. Or you might also see the word new. New means it wasn't there 24 hours ago, but it is there now. So you've got the words new, gone, or percentage. And by the way, you can also change this time if you want to. So instead of going back to previous day, you can go back 7 days, go back to previous week. So you can adjust this as you need to. But this allows you to look at your logs and compare them, you know, your current value of logs against a previous period. And that will probably give you a better indicator of issues and problems. Okay. And Steve, you're looking for the link for the recording of the session. Again, we have a recording of a session like this class, and Odell will put that in the chat box for you. We put it in there earlier. So, but that's log reduce, and then module 9 is log compare, and that takes care of that. Now, another favorite function of ours is the outlier. So you notice I'm down to about 4 exercises, so we're doing good. Like I said, we'll be done here shortly. Still running a little longer than I want to. But the outlier, like I said, if I click on it, open it up in a new tab, this provides me information about the outlier function. And you're going to find the outlier function, we provide 4 arguments. A window, which again is set by 10. I'm looking at 10 data points, the last 10 data points. Threshold, how many standard deviations do I want to go? Consecutive, how many consecutive points do I need before I consider it to be an error? And then direction, plus or minus, I'll talk about that in a second. So the best way to talk about outlier here is, let me take this code and let me copy it and let me paste it. Actually, let me get rid of all this stuff first here. And I am going to use the outlier in another lab coming up. So here again, I'm looking at my status code of 404 error messages. I'm creating a time slice of 1 minute. Let me make this, by the way, about 60 minutes. I'm doing a count of status code, which I'm going to call error count by time slice. So it's going to be called error count instead of underscore count. And then I've got this nifty little outlier, which I'm going to comment out for a second, just so we can see the data before this. So there's my time slices. Here's my error count. Notice my time slices are not in order. The outlier function will automatically put them in order. So there are some functions like transpose and outlier that automatically sort them. So now when I run this outlier, I see a whole bunch of numbers. What the heck's going on? Well, what's happened is it's taken my error count, it's gone back 10 values, added them up, calculated the mean, and calculated the standard deviation. So it's calculated my mean and my standard deviation. Then using my standard deviation and this threshold here, in this case, it's gone up or minus 3 standard deviations. So it's calculated an upper boundary and a lower boundary. So here's my upper boundary, here's my lower boundary. Is my number within my upper boundary and lower boundary? If it is, that's fine. If it is not, then I am going to flag an error. So far, these all look good. In fact, let me switch this over to a line chart. It's easier to see with a line chart. So with my line chart, here's my data, my values. My cloud is my upper and lower boundaries. And then this red triangle is an outlier. This is above my cloud range. So if I go back to my data and I go to like page, there it is. Here is this outlier. It has a value of 24, which is just above my upper boundary. So we consider this to be an error and we flag it as an outlier. Now, my consecutive value of 1, if I find a value that's outside of my range, I flag it as an outlier. If my consecutive value is 2, that means I need 2 of these in a row to be able to flag it as an outlier. So let's play around here and let's adjust this a little bit, and let's change the story here a little bit. So let me first of all change my threshold from 3 standard deviations to 2 standard deviations. Notice my cloud got a little smaller. I got a few more outliers, right? Then let's also talk about direction. Let's say that I'm a manufacturing company and I'm looking here at my defects, right? And I'm looking at my average defects. Now, if it's above average, I care about it. If it's below average, I really don't care about it. So if I don't want to see my below average defects, I can get rid of my minus sign, and that won't display anything below my average defects. Or if I don't want to see my ones above, excuse me, I just want to see the ones below. So you decide which defects or which outliers you want to see, the ones above, the ones below. Now, back to my consecutive for a minute. Again, right now, my consecutive value is 1, which means I only need 1 value out of bounds, out of range, and I'll flag it as an outlier. If I change this to 2 and I run this, now all of a sudden, a lot of my outliers have gone away. I only have this one. Why do I have this one? Let's go back to the numbers. So here I had a value of 25, which was outside of my range, but it's the first instance. My next value is 12, which was in my range, and therefore it negated this, right? It reset it. I need 2 of these in a row to then consider it to be an outlier. So this one down here, I had a value of 22, which is above my upper. Then I had a value of 18 or 10, which is below my lower. Here I now have 2 of these in a row, which means I'll now mark it as an outlier. That's what that outlier function does, that consecutive. How many points outside of my line do I need? And so that's what this outlier function does for you. Okay. Jimmy asked a question, is log compare a common feature for logging companies? I don't know. Good question. I don't know. Most of my time for the last many years hasn't been looking for logging companies as much as BI, business intelligence companies, both MicroStrategy and Cognos. So I don't know about logging companies. It's a good question, Jimmy. I don't know. Okay. And then Ryan asked an excellent question. Can you alert when outliers are identified? Absolutely, Ryan. That lab is coming up in just a few minutes. So thank you for that lead in, Ryan. I'm going to get to that. Just bear with me. Excellent. Excellent question. Any questions about this outlier function? Any questions at all? Okay. Guys, again, I apologize. I know this is taking longer than we expected, but again, a lot of good stuff here. So I want to make sure we get it down. Lab 11 is the predict operator. So with the predict operator, we can predict and see what's going on. It's kind of like the smooth operator and the difference operator. We can predict what's happening. So let me go ahead and paste this code in. Okay. And again, I'm looking at my Apache Access logs, status code of 404, breaking it up by time slice, doing a count by time slice. And again, if I run this without the predict operator, you see what we see. Now, the predict operator is kind of interesting. And let me take a moment and go back to the documentation on the predict operator. Because the predict operator here uses 2 different models. It uses a linear model or it uses an autoregression model. So linear regression or autoregression. And you can specify when you use the command which method that you want. Do you want to use linear regression or do you want to use autoregression? The example that we have here is a linear regression. Okay. And so when I run this, what this is going to do is it's going to, there's my error count. It's going to calculate my sloping line, my value at this point, and then this number minus this number gives me this. This number minus this number gives me this, gives me the difference. And so when I plot this, what I'm seeing is here's my values, and then I can see this linear regression model and where it's taking me. And so I can see where my values are going. Again, if this is my cost model, I'm probably a happy camper. This is my sales model. I am probably not a happy camper. So You guys can decide. So that's your predict operator real quick. And again, a lot of good documentation here on how to use it, which model to use, all that stuff. All right, 2 more labs to go. This transaction operator, I have to say, it's a fine operator. It's all fine, well, and good. But now we've added service maps and other functionality to our traces and other functionality to our product. So while I know transaction is going to be with us for a long time, there are probably better ways in our tool to look at transactional information. And if you want to know about those traces and spans and all stuff, please take our observability training, our observability classes. But if I take this lovely code here and I run it, what this code is basically doing is it's looking at some transaction logs, and it's parsing out the IP address of those transaction logs. And then it's basically creating buckets for all these transaction logs, saying, if something's in the confirmation bucket, I want to mark it as confirmation. It's in order ship, I want to ship it as order shipped. It's in my cart, I want to mark it as cart. And then what I want to do here when I run this, and let me run this for something other than 15 minutes, I'm going to run it for 24 hours. I want to see all the different states from state to state. And basically what I can do, because I have from state to state and count, I can click on the sand key diagram, and I can now see the process of what's happening with my transactions. So I can see that customers have added 46,670 things in their cart. In fact, out of that 46,670 things, sometimes they took something out of the cart and they put it back in the cart. So, gee, do I really want this? Do I really need it? Yeah, I do. Do I really want, that's what the loop back means. I can see from this cart how much went into the shipping information. So how much of my business did I lose from cart to shipping information? How much business did I lose from shipping information to orders shipped? Maybe they didn't like the prices of my shipping. Maybe they didn't like the prices of the tax. Maybe there was problems. Maybe the transaction was denied. Who knows? But I can see all the different states of my transaction, and I can see where I'm losing my business. Now I have to write other queries to see the data about why I lost that business, but I can see how things flowed. And then whether or not I generated, excuse me, cart to shipping information to confirmation, then to order shipped. But I can see then the flow of this transaction. And that's what this gives me. So as I said, here in our service map and in our traces and spans, where we show transactional processes, this is fairly new. It's been out about a year. This, I suspect, is probably better than this transactional stuff, but it's still there. Last exercise, Ryan's question, creating meaningful alerts. We got a link here to this blog post, and I'm going to open this up because it really is a good blog post. This is on our customer-facing website, www.sumologic. If you want to have meaningful alerts, there's 2 key principles they must have. The one, they must be actionable. Somebody should be able to do something about it. Very, very important, right? And then they also need to be directed to the right people, right? They need to be directed to who they are. And they've got a nice case study here, and they go through this, and it's really a pretty good read, okay? So if you are interested in reading it, I will put it in the chat box. But in our case, what I want to do is I want to talk about this outlier situation. So remember, we had this lovely outlier, and I had this one outlier. Now, question, do I want to be notified every time this thing runs, every 60 minutes, if there's no problems? Probably not. In fact, that's the purpose of Lab 13. In Lab 13, we recommend strongly you only want to be notified when there's a problem. So add a where clause at the end of your query to denote you have a problem. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to add a pipe, add a where clause, And I'm going to, I need the field name here, so bear with me a second. Error count violation. Error underscore count underscore violation is greater than 0. And you may recall I only had that happen once. So now that I've added this filter, now I'm only seeing that one occurrence. Now I can go in here and I can schedule this. So yesterday, when Odell taught you all how to schedule, you can go in here and do a save as, give this thing a name, schedule this search, and then you can specify your run frequency. How often do you want it to run? Since I'm running the report every 60 minutes, I probably want this to run every 60 minutes. And then what do I want to do here? Do I want it to run every time the search is complete, or only if the following condition is met, or if my value is greater than 0, something like that. So you can control, and then who do I want to send it to? Do I want to send it by email? Do I want to send it in a webhook into things like Slack or Teams or something like that? You know, how do I want to send this? Do I want to send this as a CSV signal, a script action? I can actually have a script action that might close down some ports if I see somebody's trying to play with my ports. So this is how you and I and others can be notified of problems. Now, there's another new mechanism for alerts that we've added to our product. So here and again, we talk about it in the admin class, so I apologize. But if I go into my main menu here, I go into, I'm sorry, not logs. I go into manage data, I go into monitoring. Here we can create monitors and create alerts based on either metric query or log query. And we can set up values for if we're missing data, if we've got warning levels, critical levels, we can do all that as well. So it's another way that we set up alerts. But for our purposes in this class, and when you see the test question, to make alerts more effective, we recommend that you add a where clause to filter out only the exceptions or only the alert conditions. And then you're notified based on those conditions. That's what we're looking for as far as that test question. All right, what questions have you all?
Can you repeat that test question again?
The question, and again, I'm paraphrasing the answer, so I'm doing a poor job, but you're going to see a test question that says, how would you enhance alerts or make alerts better, things like that. You're going to add a where clause to it. Just look for the answer that says add a where clause. Okay, because you only want to be notified on the outlying condition, the problem, not that everything's working great. Okay, does that answer your question?
Great session, John, and too much to take in.
It's a lot to absorb. That's why I suggest you come back here and you play with these labs at your convenience. Again, you've got access to the training labs and all that stuff. One other thing I want to do is get you in to take the exam if you want to. I realize, like I said, we're running out of time. I'll be here for the next hour while you guys take your exam. Odell will be here for the next hour while you take your exams to help you. But if you can't stick around because you only allocated 3 hours, I understand. You can take the exam anytime. But let me get you into the exam. Here, ladies and gentlemen, we are logged into Sumo Logic training environment. Down here, it says training plus analyst, whatever. Don't want you to be using that. That training analyst has already passed the test. We want you with your name to get credit for it. So what I want you all to do is I want you to log out of the environment by clicking on that training analyst account. Again, here, click sign out. And then I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. So I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment so that you're logged in with your name and you get credit for things. For those of you who are Sumos, that means you can probably log into the customer usage portal, right? Hopefully you know what that is. But if you're Sumo and don't know what system to log into, reach out in the chat and Odell and I will help you. But I want to make sure you're logged in with your name like I am here. So I'll give you a minute to do that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can't.
I was
now.
wondering with regards to the exam, it tells you what questions that you answered correctly and what questions that you did not answer correctly, but it doesn't tell you the correct answer so that you can understand why you did not answer that correctly. Is there any
You're
way to
correct.
get that information?
You are absolutely correct. Yes, sir. But it tells you what you got wrong and what you got right.
So
It doesn't
is
tell
there
you why
any-
you got it wrong, why you got it right.
So there's no way to get that information.
Well, you can ask us. Ask me and Odell. We'll gladly try to help you. If there's a question you want to argue or debate, we can certainly talk about it.
I already
I'm sorry?
No, I already completed the exam and passed, but I just wanted to see if I could. There's like 3 or 4 questions that I got wrong, and I don't have it up anymore. But
feel free to
I guess next time
ask me or
leave it
Odell, and we'll gladly go over it with you. Yeah, but again,
okay, I'll do that next time. Thank you.
If you passed, you passed, and have a great time and great life, and I realize you want to learn from any mistakes you make. It's human nature, but I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over it.
Quick question.
Okay, thanks so much. Have a good day.
You're welcome. Sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
The exam, the certification that we took yesterday is different from this certification?
That is correct. That was the fundamentals exam.
Okay.
This is the search mastery exam.
So when we go on the certification.
So when you log into your company's environment, right, like I am doing here, and then you click on the home button, then you click on the certification tab, then you click on get certified. And then here is where the get certified tests are in our learning management system. You click there and you find the search mastery exam, which is this green one.
Hold on.
Now I'm going to show you something that's very important. So just watch if you would. Don't try to follow along with me. When I register, takes me a second, boom, I'm registered. I'm ready to go. Then I can start. And so when I click start, it says there are 30 questions. You got 16 minutes to complete it. It's open book. You can even ask your instructors, open, notes, open whatever, fine. The questions are going to be fill in the blank, matching text, et cetera, et cetera. Passing score is 75%, okay? When I click next, it's going to take me to that exam. Now, there's my counter for 60 minutes, and I'll start counting down when I start looking at questions. So right now I'm fine, but if I continue to scroll down, I'm looking at questions. So it talks here about pin searches, and I didn't talk about pin searches, so my apologies on that. Let me fix that right now. Pin searches allow a user to run a search in the background. Once completed, pin searches can be found in your recents folder. What a pin search does is if a search is taking a long time, you can pin it. And that means that the system will run it in the background and you can shut down your browser, shut down your computer, and you're fine. That's what a pin search is. And if you run across a question like that we didn't discuss, let us know. Ask us. We will help you. I will help you. But there is that question. When a dashboard has been shared on the allow list sharing, by default, anybody can view it regardless of their anyone can share it regardless of their IP address. That is false. Okay. Well, actually, maybe I'm wrong there. Hang on. I'm going to answer a couple of these. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to click next. And there's a reason why I'm doing this. So first of all, it said you got 6%. Your first 2 questions, you can see I got right. The other questions I got wrong. So that goes back to somebody's point. Yes, you see what you got right, what you got wrong. But here's the key. If you want this to be added to your profile, you want to make sure you click submit. So when you pass the exam and you did well, click submit so it gets added to your profile. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile where we keep track of all of the exams that you've taken. So here's where you can view your certificate, copy it, paste it, send it to us, email it to training-promotions.com and get your, training-promotions@sumologic.com, and you can get your Uber Eats voucher, okay? You can also add it to your LinkedIn profile. So that's where that is. It's up here.
John, you said those field extraction rules. I know you and I went over this earlier. Was to exclude those unnecessary fields, right? That you didn't want to see.
It brings you the fields that you do want to see. Actually, it pre-parses those fields for you.
So why are field extraction rules best practice? Best practice. It's to prepare your data before you query it.
They're best practice because there's 2 things that happen. Number one, you're extracting them, which means people don't have to extract them and do parse anchors or parse regexes. They don't have to do that. You've already done it for them. That's one. The other thing is you're also defining a standard vocabulary. Everybody's calling the same field the same name. If I parse something out, I may call it IP address. You may call it client IP. If we use a field extraction rule, whatever that field is called is what we're going to use.
Okay, so field extraction rules pre-process your data before you're querying it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. It brings
That's
it. It
what I
brings it as the data gets ingested. That stuff gets parsed out.
Cool.
Before you write any queries, and they're available through your field browser. Good. Any other questions?
You said live. Oops, sorry. Live tail panels aren't allowed in dashboards, right?
That's correct.
Cool.
That is correct. Okay. My company does not use Sumo Logic, so how would I sign in? Excellent question, Dallas. So let me answer that question here real quick. You'll bear with me here just a second. You can sign up, Dallas, for a free Sumo Logic trial. And so anybody who needs this, I'm going to put this in the chat. Okay. Bear with me a moment.
So my question might not be related to the exam or to the lab, but just wondering because the challenge that we have with the Sumo is with the retention of these logs, as Sumo retains only the logs for the last 32 days, correct? So if we are to analyze the historical log, I'm trying to understand what is some of the best practices people or you suggest us using to have a historical log.
Gotcha. Two things. Number one, we can actually change your retention policy. So your retention policy is whatever you want it to be, except that it's going to cost you more to retain long, right? Because you're going to ingest more data in that period of time. The second thing some companies do to avoid that is that they'll parse it into Sumo Logic and then they'll forward it to like an S3 bucket or something that they own, which might be cheaper. And then they can ingest that data for historical data. Does that kind of give you an idea to answer your question?
Yeah, I understand. So to just a follow-up question on the first thing you said, we can increase your retention policy. So is that something extra of that is being included in the current package?
That is something you need to talk to your account team on. I can't answer that, but that would be your account team.
That's accounting. I understand. So any idea like how far can I retain my data?
As long, I mean, I don't know. Specifically, I don't know. So I would ask your account team.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
And they can talk about different strategies to make it more cost effective.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. No problem.
John,
ladies and gentlemen.
John, we talk about the outlier operators. Window is not one of them, correct? Which of the following is not a
window
parameter
is
of
one
outlier
of them.
operator?
Window is one of the 4 options.
A window is one of the 4?
Yes, window is one of the 4.
Oh, it was.
So what are your choices?
Window, consecutive, threshold, and quantity.
Quantity is the incorrect answer.
Okay. I would have got that one wrong.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Hey, John, for the adding a data panel, I think we discussed yesterday in fundamentals about that, but it seems that it's kind of confusing for the choices right now.
I'm sorry?
It's kind of confusing for the choices. Like I don't see the plus sign to add a new panel. It's kind of have like in the dashboard.
It depends on what kind of dashboard you created, whether it was a legacy dashboard or it was remember yesterday we used legacy dashboards. Today I showed you the new dashboards. Okay. So depending on which dashboard you use, depends on what your options are.
Yeah, it did not mention whether it's legacy or not.
Okay. Assume any questions here are about legacy dashboards.
Okay.
And again, if you get stuck on a question like that, feel free just to ask me what the question is, give me the choices, and I'll tell you the right answer.
Yeah, that's how can you add another data panel to an existing dashboard?
Yep. You're going to add a query and then add that query to the dashboard.
A new log or a metric query. Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. And somebody's asking here a question about select the sum that calculates the total books by box. So you want the sum of the size of the total books by box, the third choice. So let me copy that. Let me answer that and let me send that. So there you go. So again, any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop the recording.